You're listening to Well, I Laughed, Part 1 of Righteous Resistance, Lady Liberty.
Hi, I'm Grant.
This is Maya.
Amazing. You did it once. The way I pushed you off that ledge in a beautiful way.
That was rude.
We'll do a regular introduction here soon, but we were about to tee off on some.
Yeah. Also, if you don't want to listen to this tee off, feel free to leave.
But we're definitely, like, I was like, oh, I'm about to be a bitch in a corner, so I need to just kind of, let's go ahead and press record.
Press record.
When did we start attending people's engagements? When did that become a thing?
I'm not going to lie to you. If I want Casey more than anything to plan a surprise party for me. I want to be genuinely surprised because I don't think he can pull it off.
Interesting.
And it does make me feel superior to him.
Sure. I mean, since you have told all of us this when you were drunk, I'm sure Casey would have a lot of help from the rest of us.
Yeah, if he would ever do it. We both like project on each other. So I'm like, Casey wants a surprise party. And he's like, Maya wants to stay in.
Because Casey's like, I would hate nothing more than to come home with my evening already planned in my head. You know, in that fun way we do sometimes, yes. To find out that all those plans are ruined and you have to be social.
And all my friends are at my house. I did throw him a surprise party for his 21st birthday. It was during COVID, and his mom, I like had met her once or something, Venmo'd me a bunch of money, not a bunch of money, but like enough money. I was a college student to like buy like party supplies and
king's
like catering.
Ransom worth of alcohol, $150.
Basically. Yeah. And it was enough to also get like a small amount of catering from like, I think Noodles and Company or something.
Wow.
Yeah. We went, I mean, it was COVID. So
what a time.
What else were we going to do? You know?
Here's the thing. Surprise parties, that's great. Stop making people go to your engagement.
That's fair.
Stop. Because I'm going to go to the wedding, and I'm probably going to go to the bachelor or bachelorette party, right? Mm-hmm. And those will either both be trips or will both be investments in time. I don't need to go to like the pre-wedding. You know what I mean?
It feels like every step of planning a wedding is marked by a party.
Yeah.
You know, like engagement, party, wedding shower, another party, bachelorette, bachelor, and then like there's just so many things. A bridal shower. Do grooms have a version of a bridal shower? I don't know.
And I also think like by having now an engagement party too, it continues this like long campaign that to find someone to marry is the like greatest accomplishment one could have in their life. It makes total sense to celebrate like the legal contract. I also think it makes total sense to have just a raging party with just your half of the group beforehand, you know, before you have to be all sober and stuff.
Right.
What is the purpose of an engagement party?
Celebrate love.
Right.
Like at least a year or two before you're going to celebrate love again, but like in a different font.
And listen, I've recently been bit by the love bug. Okay, I'm recently smitten quite a bit.
He's a smitten kitten
in a
here.
way that has scared a lot of people in my life.
Actually, so many people.
We are in uncharted territory of the longest relationship of my life that I've cared about.
And that says all you need to know.
And I'm still like, no goddamn way do I want to have or will be going to engagement parties. I'm not about, I think I skipped my brother's, to be completely honest.
For all the shit you give your brother about missing various family engagements.
I had to go to his actual goddamn engagement. I didn't need to go 4 days later to the engagement party for the engagement I also had to attend.
How do you feel about an engagement party engagement combo?
Hate it even more. Hate it even more.
Okay.
Listen, my parents, they got engaged in the 80s, and so my dad proposed to my mom, and you know how much my dad is obsessed with my mom.
Yes.
Guess where my dad proposed to my mom?
Somewhere that she did not want it to happen.
No.
Oh, okay.
A village inn on a Sunday after church. My dad got out of the booth, down on one knee, and proposed to my mom at a village inn. Because times were just different back then.
Better?
Maybe.
I think.
Maybe, to be completely honest.
I just saw a post of someone who couldn't afford an engagement ring, and so he bought a kitten to propose.
I just think the idea of having your friends there for the dual engagement party thing is like, is it a surprise or is it a party? Because I think people are trying to thread the needle and get it both ways. Here's my honest take. Here's my honest take about all of this, okay? An engagement is supposed to happen between just the two people that are getting engaged.
And the photographer, if you're Casey.
Correct. And the photographer who is wearing a terrible wig or a hoodie somewhere
Dressed
in the
camo.
general vicinity,
Oh, God.
right? And I get capturing that genuine surprised moment. I just have never seen a video of someone who was truly and legitimately surprised. Now, my sister-in-law might be listening to this, and she might be like, Grant, I was truly and legitimately surprised, and I love that for you, girl. I'm happy that we pulled that off.
There've been a few. I think an engagement party right after an engagement can be weird, but I also think it like really depends on the person.
Yeah.
Like
Sorry.
I went on for I helped plan Alexandra's engagement party, and that felt like really great, like celebrating Alexandra, maybe because she already does so many weddings that it felt good to give her something that she wasn't like, she didn't have to plan. But yeah, I don't know. I feel you, but I don't.
I have more things, I think, as I'm like exploring this. I think it's just between the two people who are doing it, maybe the hidden photographer, but should be in public. You should be getting a lot of attention from strangers.
Yes, 100%. You should actually be faking it a lot before you actually get engaged.
And as a person who accidentally almost proposed to Tyler in Italy when we went a couple years ago, you should do it multiple times. You should. It should be your favorite bit to do for like an entire month.
I'm going to propose to you when we're at
that's honestly so fun.
Conference.
I have a pretty serious work reputation there, so maybe pick some up. Do it at Pride. I think that'd be so funny. Do it.
Shut the fuck up.
Do it.
A heterosexual couple.
10:30 p.m. Pride. Charlie's back patio. That's when I want it to happen, but only from a woman.
Yeah, that seems fair.
But then also, maybe I'm old-fashioned, but I feel like after you've been engaged, the newly engaged couple then tells the people in their life, and it's like kind of the first thing they really do is like an engaged couple.
That is really fun.
Everyone's there as you get engaged, then actually you're like the 18th person to find out you're about to be proposed to.
That's actually really fair. It did give me a lot of joy telling people.
Right. And then finally, and this might just be my own boomerness coming out, but the idea that like a lifelong memory would then be immediately followed by the people in my life and his life, all with a phone and pointed at me, like perform for us, perform authenticity and shocked and undying love and gratitude, like in a moment where I should just be allowed to be like, ah, ha, ha, suck it, Allie, right? Don't rob me of that. Allie's my sister.
I'm starting to like play it out in my head and like thinking about if Casey had done a surprise. I still want that. I'm not saying that this is changing my perception, but
you guys are a year into legal marriage.
More than a year,
yeah.
but that's fine.
Well, it's not 2.
Yeah, it's a year and a half. Get it right.
Right. So that's why I said more than a year.
Grant, we're arguing semantics,
I
baby.
am right is the issue. Stay pinned down.
I don't know.
I should have worn shorts. No, I'm already pretty warm.
Yep.
Anyways. Casey.
If he had done like a surprise after we had gotten engaged, it would have been sweet for about 30 seconds, you know? And depending on who he invited, like if it was like you guys and Lydia, like that would have been hysterical because we have a great time no matter where we are.
Correct.
But if he had started inviting people that are like in the circle, but like kind of not, what do you small talk about?
Right.
Because like
at your engagement.
Like it's like, did you know? Or did you know? Did you have anything to do with the ring? And as far as like the person getting engaged too, that's really like, you can't be like wedding planning.
Yeah.
You know, which is the next big question.
They're going to be like, so have you thought about who's in the bridal party?
Me?
Listen, have the kind of engagement you want. It's all about joy, baby. I'm saying I don't want to go to an engagement party.
You don't want to go to one or you don't want to have one?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
That feels self-centered. That's all I'm going to say.
If I do get engaged, obviously I'd go to your engagement party. I mean, I don't have to fly to that.
Well, we're getting engaged if Casey ever dies. So
That's so true.
yeah, we're having a lavender marriage. Or I'm marrying a very butch lesbian.
I'm doing it for the money.
That seems fine.
So I will not sign a
big
prenup.
risk.
And when it runs out, I'm gone. Okay? When it runs out, I run out on you.
Where are you going to go, babes?
I don't know. I'm gonna kind of keep my options open.
Okay.
Finally, after my dream engagement party.
Well,
What other stuff do you have going on? Oh, speaking of marriages, actually. Speaking of marriages,
okay.
Brian Nome.
Who the hell?
Brian Nome. Christy Nome's husband.
Oh! I was so on another track.
So that's happened since our last recordings
Yes.
episode. It's
You
because
know
my
what
spring
else has
break.
happened?
I mean, a lot of really sad news. So I wouldn't say on this
but
for
Pam
a second.
Bondi got fired.
Yes, 100%
Fuck
as
you!
well. 100% as well.
Yeah.
It's actually so funny that the two women most loyal to the most misogynistic president we've ever had were the two people first
The
fired.
two DEI
from
hires,
his-
basically.
Like, just aside from just like the sweet, poetic, deeply predictable irony of all of that.
Yeah.
Brian Nome being outed with having like a very specific type of, I don't even know the word, sexual fetish. Is that like the cleanest terminology for it? For a very specific preference.
No
and
idea
proclivity.
what it was.
If anyone in our friend group had that, I'd be like, admittedly not my thing, but good for you.
Yeah,
you
especially
know?
if you're going to dress up.
And I love
yeah,
dressing
girl.
up. You know, if
Get
anyone,
your tits in.
if anyone in our group were to be like, that's us, or like stranger on the street, they'd be like, sorry, you're not supposed to know about this, but blah, blah, blah. I'd be like, you know, at the end of the day, we're all freaks. My favorite thing to do is to eat too much wasabi at a sushi restaurant. None of us are perfect, right? The funny thing about the Brian Nome situation and the whole Nome scandal is I love seeing the shame that he is experiencing about this. I'm not shaming him for it. I love to see the shame that he's experiencing it because he believes in his soul that that is shame people like you and I should experience and then actively works to create a world that punishes us for that. So what I'm ultimately trying to say is, haha, fuck you.
Haha, fuck you. And also, hey, take it from an ADHD bitch who now has a podcast that's been going on for 3 years, like kind of on accident. Like, we're all glad you're here. But if you're going to do something like that, do it all the way. What are you doing? Be good at what you're doing, babes. Like that's the most shameful part. I'm sorry. I'm not ashamed of your sexual inclinations.
Right.
I'm ashamed of the fucking balloons as boobs. We can do better. We have done better.
Especially if your wife is making as much money as she was embezzling from the federal government.
There's no way you can't.
Right.
You're not being able to afford that kind of shit.
AdamandEve.com doesn't have something along those places.
I'm certain you can get it at like fucking Spencer's or something.
I say this with love as a queer person. If drag queens, who, the ones I know, some of the most recklessly financially irresponsible people I know, can afford breastplates, so can Brian now. And the thing too is it's like you want so badly to criminalize us.
Yeah.
That whatever culture of like hate and shame that exists around that only exists because you have worked to help propagate it. And now it is only falling down on you again, you know? And also, drag queens are now making super big time fun of you. And that brings me joy too.
Beautiful. You offended the only group of people who could realistically make you cry with their words now.
Like, it's actually so funny. If you had gotten caught embezzling, which Christy Nome very much was kind of caught. And apparently that just doesn't matter at all. Like, that wouldn't have the kind of deep, sweet irony. Yeah. But your wife and you, by standing by her, believed that the federal government's role was to literally break down the homes of those people who were here either documented or undocumented, haul them out into the street, into unmarked cars, and then ask deep, probing, personal questions about their life to decide if they should stay or not, and deported many of them, regardless of whatever their answers were. You have done so much work to get deep into the bones of people's personal lives, that for this to be the scandal that like brings it all down.
And it's classic to me that this motherfucker took a picture of himself doing
What are they
this.
going to say in Sioux Falls? I'll never be able to show my face in Yankton. What's going to happen to our
Okay,
community
babes.
in Brookings?
Move to a city. Go to a gay bar.
What am I supposed to do? Never go to Rapid City, South Dakota again? Oh, no.
No.
I want to go Minot. Why not? But I'm pretty sure that's in North Dakota, so that doesn't work. Pretty sure it doesn't. I don't really know. As a Nebraskan, I have never cared about what happened to the north of us. And Kansas can suck it. So the very few people from the Midwest that listen to us from the actual Midwest understand those politics.
Okay, hey, how
Yeah.
was spring break?
Amazing.
Pivoting.
Fantastic. Oh, before I isolate more countries
Yes.
and communities
Yep.
and states.
Please.
Yeah. No, really good.
I offered
Really
Grant
good.
because I thought he was going to be gone over spring break, so
did
I
too.
adjusted our schedule so that we weren't going to record, and so we're double recording this week. And I was like, we can move that so we're not double recording. He was like, let's just keep it the way that it is. So I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So I haven't really seen Grant for like a week.
Do you know what's the really tough thing, actually?
Mm-hmm.
The hardest part about my spring break was I spent several nights at my partner's apartment because they had to work in the morning and I didn't. So it didn't make sense for them to wake up at my house
Right.
and then go, whatever,
Yeah,
and run
yeah.
all these errands. They should just wake up at the place where all of their stuff
Where
is.
they need it,
right.
yeah.
But that did also mean that I had to wake up before 9 a.m. for at least 2 of the 5 weekdays that was my spring break. And it really centered me in gratitude.
Well,
For the 3 other days that I didn't have to do that. And then on the first of the 2 days, I was like, well, let's turn, apples into apple pie. And I did go to the bakery that Lydia used to work at. And one of the people
used
noticed
to.
me.
She still works there technically.
Yes, just not as
Yeah,
regularly.
yeah.
But one of the people that was working there that day, recognized me. And I was like, hey, girl. And it's like a super popular bakery. So I felt super cool and important.
Every time anyone mentions it, I was like, oh my God, I know someone that works there.
And then a fun surprise came from that whole exchange that I will tell you about on Patreon. So stay tuned.
You should write it down because we've done that several
So
times in the
many
last
times.
several episodes where you said, join us on Patreon, and then it doesn't get brought up.
Great. Amazing. Let me do that. This is not the right app. I'm doing that now.
Oh, okay.
How was your last week?
I horse sat for 5 horses. And
You should have seen how she managed to fit them all in the house.
turns out riding 5 horses in one day is really fucking hard on your legs. And it was like a dream come true. I've been trying to talk to the trainer about, or the barn owner about maybe helping out some more while she's in the country. And she seems to be open to that. So we're going to see. But it's just such a compliment for her to be like, you ride good enough that I trust you with these horses I'm training. And then also just the ego boost of like being there and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm riding for so and so. And they're like, oh, okay. And that just it was a good time. It was a good time. It was an ego boost. I learned a lot. My legs still hurt.
Yeah.
And I didn't go to F45 really that much while I was doing this. So I did my first F45 workout in like a week and a half today, and it almost killed me.
You came home from riding those horses more tired than you come home from your work days usually.
Yeah, because you have to be like on with horses because they, I don't know why or how. I think it's like body language and eye contact, and someone said pheromones, which feels weird to me, but they read you like a motherfucking book and then just project back what you're giving to them. And yeah, you can't not be. There was a couple of rides where I was like, I might die here. Just various situations that caused it to be like a little bit scary. And I was like, trying to like slow my heart rate.
Meanwhile, across town, I am waking up from a croissant-induced nap.
Fuck off. Boo.
I did do one more thing over my spring break, which I'm excited to share. Over my spring break, I calculated how many full work weeks I have left between now and summer.
Yeah.
And it's
like,
not a lot.
No, you can count them on at least one hand. I think one hand.
I would say, you can count it on one hand and have some room to spare a little bit. But that's in part because of a like fun combination of like trips we're going on, like that conference, and then like a strategic use of like sick days around my birthday, which is in April. If you wanted to start like sending anything, like it's in April, just so you know. I'm sure I've said my birthday before, but like I'm not going to give that away on the air anymore.
It's Earth Day.
Right. Oh, God, right. Hold on. One more funny story. I interrupted yours. I've missed chatting with Maya, if that's not clear. Seen her loads, missed this format.
I didn't have a ton more about the horses.
Gotcha.
Without showing pictures and videos and being here for a while.
So talking with my boyfriend and his best friend. Give me a name for best friend, girl.
Brianna.
Brianna, amazing. So it's me, boyfriend, and Brianna, right? And Brianna's like, oh, gosh, you should come to my work on Earth Day. I think we're doing like an event that day. It's super cool. It's going to be outside. And she goes, oh, God, but I just can't remember what day it is. And I go, oh, that's April 22nd. Earth Day is April 22nd. It's going to be a Wednesday. And she's like, okay, cool. And like under her breath, she's like, autism. And my boyfriend turns to me and goes, how do you know that? And I go, it's my birthday. And the heaviness in the car.
Especially because his birthday just passed.
We were actually like actively on our way to go celebrate his birthday. Like it was on our way to one of those celebrations. And you could see Brianna in the rearview mirror being like, and like look out the window. And he's like, look, I have it written down and it's in the calendar and you can even check the shared calendar. Like it's in the shared calendar. I just don't know it off the top of my head. I go, yeah, no, it's fine. And then I ramble off his birth date and year. I was like, yeah, no, no. That's fine. Like it's not common knowledge for people to know that about their partner.
You also memorize like hundreds of names within a week every fall.
I do.
So
I'm willing to use it for evil.
It's so upsetting.
So around Earth Day, wish me a happy birthday.
I don't know when this episode comes out.
That's fine.
I think it is the week before your birthday, I think.
Fine. Okay, wait, so that means
next
week is...
No, it's not. I lied.
Great.
No, the episode that I just scheduled comes out the first week of April.
I'm adding more Patreon notes.
Okay, cool.
Beautiful, amazing, wonderful, fantastic, stylish.
Stylish.
I think that's officially what I have to share with us.
This episode is releasing on your birthday.
Hey!
Happy birthday to Grant.
Just so you know, I am actively probably reading the messages right now on the Instagram, if, of course, it's around my lunchtime.
I may have been subbed in if there were too many.
I hadn't even thought about that.
Or if it's your birthday, you can ask me to do that.
I need to decide what I want when it comes to that.
Oh, I was like, what you want for your birthday would also be great. I had an idea and it didn't pan out, but I know you're not that kind of person.
It's April. And you're like, I'm like, it hasn't panned out. I just ordered my partner's birthday present, and his was like weeks ago. That's
okay. Lydia's still cross-stitching my Christmas gift.
Don't worry, Jacob's still framing mine from 2023. So,
fucking incredible. Oh, I forgot to write the list of trigger warnings.
To laugh immediately after that sentence.
So your
stay
face.
With us.
Your face. Leave me alone. Okay. I'm gonna be real with you. Okay. What are you? Oh, okay.
I'ma be. Yeah, exactly. The Black Eyed Peas or whatever, whoever's saying that.
It is the Black Eyed Peas.
Great, amazing. We're getting a lot wrong lately. You're going to be honest with us. Cut all of that out. Horrible content.
It's staying in now. This story is one that's been on my list for a really long time. And it's one of those stories where you see a headline and you're like, that would be an amazing story. And you start digging in and you're like, this is an amazing story. And then you get really into it and you're like, oh my God, this is kind of really sad. So I'm not going to hide anything from you guys right now. We're going to talk about World War II. And I'm not going to have the capacity to say a trigger warning before all the bad things happen. But it's World War II in the Netherlands. There's going to be a lot of death, of people of varying ages. There's going to be gun violence, kind of sexual assault, not like really. And actually, is that it? What other trigger warnings do we give out?
Probably
Violence?
a reference to genocide.
Genocide, yeah. That one it's
The backdrop.
yeah, it's the backdrop. We're not seeing it here. We're seeing like the repercussions of it. So yeah, discrimination, genocide, kidnapping off the streets, that sort of thing. But we're not going to talk anything gory. We're not going to go into like a crazy amount of detail, like nothing like O.J. Simpson. But if you don't have the capacity for that, that is totally cool. Join us next week where Grant has, I'm sure, a happier story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Actually,
Please.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, hey, look at me. It's a pretty good one.
Okay,
I'm pretty
good,
excited
good.
about the one that I have for next week.
I think I found my like next story.
Okay,
and
so
I'm
I got to figure out what my theme
so
is.
excited. If it pans out,
Great.
we'll see. It's not Helen Keller, I promise. Oh, I never said this. So in the dark, I did the Bears.
Right.
My first idea was Helen Keller.
Right. You did say that to me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I should not be laughing at that.
It's why I have made several references to it since then. You just thought you were on top of a big mystery.
Yeah, I did.
And you weren't.
I were, but it weren't.
Instead, you Freedom of Information Act about bear activity to find
Prove
out you were still
myself
wrong. Explaining that to my boyfriend was a beautiful example of like, that's like kind of the degree of seriousness we take. Like we're actually
Deeply.
doing serious things, but it's like, well.
But for why?
Well, I laughed.
Hey. Okay, so we're going to get into it. Our first little section is going to be about a woman named Janetja Johanna Schaft, otherwise known as Yo, J-O, but it's pronounced like a Y, yeah. She was born September 16th of 1920 in Haarlem, which is in North Netherlands. It's like right outside of Amsterdam, just a little bit to the west. It's, I guess 12 miles west of the capital, Amsterdam. Her father was Peter Clash. Peter worked in education and was also active in the SDAP, the Social Democratic Workers' Party. Her mother, Afia Talia Johanna Vreyer, Afia also had worked in education until she married to Peter. And so Joe also had an older sister named Alice, who was 5 years her senior, and Alice tragically passed away at the age of 12 due to diphtheria. And this is something that affected the family so deeply that it would continue to affect like them for years and decades to come. It was very well known in the like area where they grew up in Haarlem that this family was very socially aware and active. And I don't know if they were communist, but it was definitely like socialist, I don't think anyone labeled this family as communist. But so prior to Alice passing, they were very active and outgoing. And then after Alice passed, the family became much more secluded. They still remained very politically aware, but were just not as active in the community. So this is the Schaft family. Yo is the smallest little girl.
Oh
and
the cutest little glasses.
Yeah.
And the embroidered dresses.
It's just a very classic sepia.
So cute.
Yeah, it's a cute little photo.
That's a face that could have seen an iPhone, though.
Yeah.
Like, she has a very modern face. No one else in that family
Correct.
has, but
She does. She really does.
She has played Candy Crush once
Yeah.
in her life.
She's lost money on Candy Crush somehow. Okay. So the family moved around a lot when Yo was young, before and I think after Alice passed. Although she performed well in school and was at the top of her class, she was known to be kind of like shy and withdrawn, and possibly due to the moving around a lot and not being able to really like set her roots down, and also probably definitely due to the fact that she had bright flaming red hair, she was the subject of a lot of bullying. And because the family had already lost Alice, they were increasingly protective of Yo. For example, she was not allowed to go to like a particular gym or school because the bike ride was too far. She would always have to wear like thick cardigans even when the weather was warm because her parents were terrified she would like catch a cold and that kind of thing. So the family, like I mentioned, was not particularly politically involved anymore. They were always politically aware, and it was often a topic that was brought up around the dinner table. And they were very concerned about Adolf Hitler and his National Socialism. And they were also concerned about Anton Mussert, the leader of the National Socialist movement in the Netherlands specifically. Yo's parents, with all of this as the backdrop, were sure to instill in Yo the principles of justice and equality. And this is something that you can see if you want to do a deep dive. You can like find some of her like essays she wrote for the various education levels she was in. And a lot of times she will talk about political and social justice. Yo passed her exams in 1937. And initially, she wanted to become a Dutch language teacher because she wanted to follow in the footsteps of her parents who worked in education. Quote, however, she decided against teaching because she dreaded keeping order in the classroom.
It's one of my least favorite things.
I feel like you do it pretty well, though. You scare the children, I think.
I'm gonna replace the name of the child with your name.
Okay.
For what I had to do today.
Thank you for the warning.
Yeah. Hey, Maya, I'm sorry. This is the third time I've had to tell you to please stop talking. But I'm not looking for you to just like comply. I'm asking you to prioritize what we are doing right now over the activity you have decided is more important. That is not your priority. It is this. And until you change, I will have to keep redirecting you. So please stop and make this a priority. Please continue.
Do you want to do the rest of the story?
they got 2 warnings, and then, not necessarily public execution style, but it was like, hey, you're not a bad person. It's that you are making a terrible choice that is leading me to constantly redirect you. And your priorities are in the wrong spot right now.
So Yo was very quiet.
Sure.
And so I don't know that was necessarily in her wheelhouse. Yeah.
That's fair. Hey, that's fair.
Yeah, I know. So instead of doing whatever that was, she decides to study law at the University of Amsterdam.
Sorry. Just like maybe the only thing that's actually more order rigid than teaching. But you don't have to keep it. You would help,
you just
you
do
explore
it. Yeah. So she wanted to do this and then eventually specialize in international law so that she could go after graduating to Geneva to join the League of Nations. The League of Nations was like pre-UN, right?
It what?
Anything else about that?
Sure.
I don't know.
League of Nations is formed right after World War I, but famously does not involve the United States. The U.S. Senate fails to ratify our treaty into it, which makes the League of Nations a failure because you don't have like this emerging superpower at the time, like a part of it. It was supposed to help resolve conflict, but as Germany, Italy, and Japan very quickly found out, it was incapable of doing any of that. But it was built on such great hope. Right.
Okay, so she wanted to do that. Would you say it was communist at all?
The League of Nations?
Yeah.
No, but like communism at this time dreamed of communism spreading across the world and creating like a communist world order. And the League of Nations was the world's first ever approach at like a global government, even just like a global organized forum to resolve issues. And so there is parallels there.
Right. Okay. That's just one of the keys that people look to when they are trying to figure out if Yo was communist around this time, is that she wanted to join the UN. But so she was still rather shy and quiet, but in law school, she ended up joining the Amsterdam Female Student Association, the AVSV, and here is where she made some of her first friends. One that we will bring up again later was Feline Polak and Sonja Frank, both of whom were Jewish, and then the next 2 were Annie van Kalsem and then Nellie Liuting. With Annie and Nellie, so the 2 non-Jewish girls, the 3 of them founded an organization called GEMMA, which is an acronym for a Latin phrase, Genmer e minoribus appetinus, which is Latin for from small things we strive for bigger things. And I'm not sure if Feline and Sonja ended up being a part of that group or what that vibe was, but so that is Yo Schaft. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about the Oversteegen Girls. Oversteegen Girls.
Okay. You're doing a great job with a complex language.
There's like a sound at the G, the Dutch, that Oversteegen. I can't do it. Anyway, Oversteegen Girls. Oversteegen Girls. Oversteegen Girls. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
I did it. Oh my God. Okay.
Adding another thing to the Patreon.
Something about throats?
Nope.
Cool.
Not at all.
Okay, so the Oversteegen girls they're sisters. There is Truus Oversteegen, who was born on August 29th, 1923. So 3 years after Yo was born. And then Freddie Nanda Oversteegen, who will go by Nani. She was born on September 6th, 1925. So we kind of have Yo's the oldest, Truus is the middle, and then Nani is the youngest.
And all three of these are daughters.
Yes,
cool.
All
Okay.
daughters. They were both Truus and Freddie were born in Schoten, which is now part of Haarlem. Nani, aka Freddie, got her boyish first name after a foster child who the family had taken in who had passed away, I think prior to her being born, who passed away at the age of 5. So their parents were Treintje van der Molen and Jacob Wilhelm Oversteegen, who went by Co. And none of the parents' names are important for you to remember, by the way. So in the Truus and Nani's youth, the family again moved around a lot and to very unique locations. For a while, they lived on a houseboat. For a while, they just lived in a horse wagon. They were in
A horse wagon.
Yes.
A wagon drawn by a horse.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I think they were like poverty
So these people
for
are
a while.
very, very poor.
Very poor. For a while, they were even just like squatting.
Okay.
And a lot of this was because Ko, the father, did not seem to really take being a family man seriously. Couldn't keep a job, like didn't really care to try to keep a job. He had a beautiful singing voice, I guess, and so could have like pursued that, but just didn't. Ko was frequently unemployed and generally just not a great dad, so the couple got a divorce.
Whoa.
In 33.
Whoa.
Whoa.
After 3 kids, though, did they think more mouths
kids.
to feed? 2 kids. Did they think more mouths to feed would solve?
I think the Treintje was just like, I'm tired. Like, you're
Sure.
dead weight at this point.
Yeah.
And so, like, getting a divorce at this time was not common.
Right.
Not something that was done. And now Treintje is a single working class mother to
Right.
these 2 girls
A single mom
who works at
2
probably
jobs.
2 jobs. Yeah.
who loves her kids and never stops.
And this story is about Reba McEntire. No, it's not. It's not. So the family eventually, the 3 of them now kind of settled down, and now that they weren't moving as much with Ko, and their mother did consider herself to be a communist.
Okay.
And was very active and socially involved in like the organizations and taught her daughters the ideals she lived by, but also the importance of fighting injustice.
Sure.
And so in the early 1930s, their mother encouraged them to make dolls for the children suffering in the Spanish Civil War, and then would volunteer with the International Red Aid, which is the communist Red Cross for political prisoners, as it was described to me. So before the war, World War II starts in what year?
In Europe, 1939.
Okay, yeah. Before the war, potentially as early as 1934 and going well into 1939, this family, their mother, took in Jewish refugees into their home. And at this point, Nani and Truus learned that in order to keep people like refugees safe, you needed to prepare to make personal sacrifices.
It's always the people who have the least or who have lived with the least who understand the true value of like what help at a key moment can be.
Yeah, exactly. Like at this point, they were living in such poverty that Truus and Nani were sharing a bed.
Yeah.
And that bed was made of straw. And they gave that bed up to Jewish
refugees,
refugees.
right.
Yeah. The Observer would later write something along the lines of, the first thing the Nazis took from the Oversteegen sisters were their beds. Around 1934, a lot of people were fleeing Germany for safer countries like the Netherlands.
Right.
Around this time, also, Treintje, their mother, gave birth to a son named Robbie. It's not sure who the father is.
Mamma mia.
Robbie would eventually take on Treintje's last name, and it's believed to be most likely that the father is someone who is staying at their house as a refugee. And that's pretty wicked coded.
I'm pretty pretty sure about this history, but I'm giving myself the small crack of a door in case I get it a little wrong. But one of those families that moves, one of those Jewish families that moves from Germany to the Netherlands is the Franks.
Yes.
Because they are trying to escape that. And the reason why they moved to the Netherlands is because the country Otto Frank applied to first rejected them, which of course was the United States. You can find in the historical record their visa application to the U.S. being rejected, and then they moved to the Netherlands.
That's tough. This is the 3 Oversteegen siblings, including Robbie. This photo was taken in 1935 for their mother's birthday. I'm just so excited for you to describe this image.
Oh,
it's so sweet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the tallest is Truus.
So Truus, the tall one, is the only child in this photo. Hair has absolutely been cut with scissors that were in the middle of an art project and just moved over to new material for a second. Yeah. Truus also has like a child's face with like little cheeks that you could almost see like freckles on. Like just so adorable. Truus is on the far when you're looking at it far left. To the far right is the younger sister.
Nani.
Who sells cigarettes at the Kitty Cat Club, apparently.
The way she's standing is so cunty.
Okay, absolute come and get it, Bob. Okay,
Yeah.
black
Yes.
cut right at the jowls. Her head is tilted up and her eyes squinting a little bit at you.
Yeah.
There is a feather in her hair, again, that looks like she sells cigarettes at the Kitty Cat Club. And to top it all off, why her older sister is wearing like an adorable sweater with like a little polo collar on it that absolutely looks like a school uniform. She's wearing a little black dress number with a little bit of lace at the top or whatever.
It's like a Sabrina the Teenage Witch dress.
Correct, but none of them are as old as the grown man trapped in the body of their youngest brother.
Who's 3 at this time.
Can't be older than 3 in this photo. And looks like he just got home from work where he was notified by his mother that, no, we talked about this before you left to go work at State Farm. Today is the day we're taking the family photo. He goes, well, then I'm not going to change. I'm just going to wear this fully grown adult outfit down to the boots and stand on this chair between my grown adult woman sister and my other sister who's about to start her shift. And let's get this done. This corner right here in the room without any pictures on it at all whatsoever. This blank wall corner that looks like we've recently been arrested. Yes, give me the hardest wooden chair. I'll stand on it with these boots. And then, are we ready? And then he exhales as they take the photo. His whole body is deflating for a little bit. We good? We got it? Okay.
That's a man. That's a boy who has a 401k.
Yeah, 100%.
Who has seen what taxes are supposed to be like.
Correct.
Like, I just love how much cunt Nani is serving. Like, she has her hand on her hip. Her, like, hip is popped. Meanwhile, her older sister just looks like an actual human being.
The oldest sister being that way, this not making anyone feel weird about their bodies. But you know how suddenly in one evening, teenage girls between the grades 4 and 5 gain 1.5 feet of height.
Yes.
And that is then their permanent height for the rest of their life.
Yes.
She's just woken up from that evening, and yet she is
Her
still
legs
the
look a
only
little too
child.
long.
Yes, everything is. It's a fantastic photo. Thank you for that opportunity.
It's an incredible photo. I saw that and I was like, yeah, we're gonna take that.
I do feel like my biggest skill is describing things. So.
It's and then he exhaled. His entire body is collapsed. It's so real. His face is...
His left hand is on its way into a clenched fist. It just got caught in a moment before.
He's pissed. We're now going to combine kind of the timelines of Yo and Nani and Truus. So this section is called the First Acts of Rebellion. The Germans invade Poland September 1st, 1939. For months following this, Yo sends packages of food, clothing, and blankets to imprisoned Polish officers. Remember, she's at university. Robbie is 6 at this time, Nani is 14, Truus is 16, and Yo is 18. So the next spring, May 10th, 1940, is when the Germans invade the Netherlands. I was doing some fact finding right at the end kind of, and The Netherlands were so wildly unprepared to be invaded.
Can I talk to you
Yes,
about this?
absolutely you
Thank
can.
you
I got like two
so
little bullet
much.
points of it, and I was like, what?
Okay, so one of the reasons why the Netherlands is so wildly unprepared for war
Yes.
against the Germans specifically is because there was no reason to invade the Netherlands from like a logical standpoint at the time. Obviously now we're like, oh, it's Hitler, of course he's going to do.
Yeah.
But like at the time, like
He was like, we don't have resources. We don't have,
The argument many people understood about the war against Poland was that there were huge sections that had once been part of Germany that were then given to Poland after World War I. And people were like, sure, it's awful what they're doing in Poland.
But I get it.
But they're reclaiming land that was taken from them
Yeah.
and they're mad, whatever. And then England and France declare war on Germany after they invade Poland. And so it's literally Germany versus England and France.
Right.
And many people are thinking that Germany might try to like sneak into France,
Right.
which is the strategy they had used in World War I.
Right.
And that meant going through Belgium. But like Belgium's to the south of the Netherlands.
Right.
Germany in World War I goes through Belgium and Luxembourg and tries to do like this famous
little,
like
like,
right
U,
wood like hinge swing into
Yeah.
France. And so Belgium's fully preparing for war, like
Right.
preparing for what's about to happen. The Netherlands never fought in World War I, and they assume even if the Germans pull off like a swing again, they're not going to involve the Netherlands.
Because they know that we're not.
Correct.
We out.
Right. The Netherlands only gets you to Belgium, which you can already get to from Germany.
Right.
And so while other small countries are unprepared, or, you know, Denmark and Norway have their own approaches to dealing with like an imminent German invasion,
Right.
the Dutch are understandably shocked that they're invaded.
Yes. Yeah. The random sources that I found right at the end were saying Netherlands owned 0 tanks.
Yeah.
At this point, at the time of the invasion, owned 0 tanks. In fact, after World War I, they did nothing to change their military standing, except they added 2 things, which was battalions on bikes. What?
It's a very flat country. It's very good to bike.
They love their bikes, and we be getting that. But really, that's what you thought you were missing?
Yeah.
Was military bikes. And somewhere said that they had been retrofitted specifically so that the people riding them could play instruments.
That doesn't shock me either.
You gotta play
Gotta keep the morale up.
gonna play the cows home like right now? Right now? Anyway, they were wildly fucking unprepared to be invaded. No one thought they would get invaded. And now here we are, May 10th, 1940, the Germans have invaded. Shortly after this invasion, do you know what the Netherlands government does?
Most of it flees to London and becomes a government in exile, much like the Poles had done.
Yeah. Queen Wilhelmina, who was the queen at the time, and the rest of the government fled to London. This occupation that is starting right now is going to continue until the end of the war.
Yeah.
Rotterdam, which is 50 miles south of Haarlem being the city that we've been focusing on so far with the Schafts and the Oversteegens. After this, Oversteegens, Jesus. After this, the Jews that the Oversteegens had sheltered in their like very I don't want to say low level, but like minimal house.
And they're like bare.
In their bare bones.
Yeah.
In their bare bones situation. Those Jews were moved, like the community or whoever was kind of organizing this underground railroad of sorts. They moved them to somewhere else because they were scared that the family would be a large target for political raids due to their well-known political leanings of being a communist. Unfortunately, we do believe that most likely none of the Jews that they had harbored made it out of the war, just because the sisters never heard from them. That doesn't mean that they didn't make it out of the war, because things got very dicey and hard to like reconnect afterwards. But there's that. May 15th, 1940 is when the Netherlands surrendered.
Yeah.
They gave a solid 5 days of effort, and then we're like, well, May 18th of 1940, Bernhard Eisendrath was one of the first voices calling for resistance. And being someone that's in university, of course, Yo's going to hear about this call for resistance and is also going to be upset about the invasion. And this is maybe one of the most chilling lines in the book that I read. There is a book that was my primary source that we'll talk about in a bit. But this line, I had to like set the book down after this. Quote, after the turmoil of the invasion subsided, Yo went back to Amsterdam, and soon everyday life continued as usual.
Say that again?
Soon, everyday life continued as usual. That's just like, what do you mean? Like, in my mind, World War II, like, it's like going and going and going, and there's like all of this conflict and stuff, because that's what you focus on, but you don't realize that like the places that are not war torn are not war torn. Like, people are still like, she's still going to classes, she's still like studying for exams,
Right.
and all that shit feels so menial in comparison to like what's about to happen and what is happening, that just really fucked with my brain. So the two Oversteegen girls joined their mother in distributing anti-Nazi papers and pamphlets. So they said they already think we're communist, so we're gonna distribute anti-Nazi papers. Nani, this is a quote from her later, quote, "We also glued warnings across the German posters in the street that were calling men to work in Germany, and then we'd hurry off on our bikes." Those kinds of posters read things like, the Netherlands, or the things that they wrote on the posters read things like, "The Netherlands have to be free, and every Dutchman working in Germany, a German will go to the front," meaning like the more we offer them assistance, the more capacity they have to fight. The girls would also graffiti. They would go out and literally draw pro-resistance slogans on the walls. And the penalty for this at this point could have very easily been death for all of them, even the young girls. The Oversteegens, as if what they were doing wasn't enough, printed illegal magazines in their living room with a stencil machine to distribute to other people. Yeah, so they're like, they're
fully in it.
They're walking the walk, they're talking the talk, baby.
Which is like, by today's comparison, like, is essentially like running your own blog about what's going on. But like the importance of that, and I think we're finding that now a little bit more. When I think people who share our political ideology, like people on the left, understand that like our corporately owned media is susceptible to pressure from like largely conservative politicians. And not to say like, don't trust the news, listen to the moon, howl, howl at the toilet or like whatever. What I'm trying to say is
that why you take so long in the bathroom?
No, it's not even, sorry, I'm trying to stay on message. There's a whole, but like, hey, here's like an alternative way of understanding this.
Yeah.
Like, here's an alternative narrative for what's going on right now.
Yeah.
Like, let's even ask just a couple of questions, right?
Yeah. And that the fact that they have like dedicated media, I think is fascinating, at least through this lens of today. In October of 1940, all government officials, which included professors and lecturers, were required to sign an Aryan Declaration. What was that?
I work for the government and I am not of Jewish descent. Yep. I'm Aryan. I'm
proof of Germanic descent.
Right.
Yeah. And notably, most officials at this time did sign it. I mean, they were maintaining status quo. They would lose their jobs if they didn't sign it. There's so many reasons why someone would just give in. November 22nd, 1940, Jews were permanently expelled from universities, both students and staff. February 25th of the following year, 1941, the February strike occurs after a German raid, and that German raid resulted in over 400 Jewish men being arrested and deported. Quote, "The February strike was the only open protest on a massive scale against the persecution of Jews in occupied Europe." And Yo, of course, being active in the community, took part in numerous protests around this time. Again, the penalty for that could have been death or deportation or whatever. In the autumn of 1941, stricter measures were announced against Jews. And this is a quote from Yo. "If they are no longer allowed to walk in the park, I will not go there anymore." More of that. What are we doing? Quit fucking going to Chick-fil-A. I'm sick of it. It was hard for Yo and her friends, particularly those of Jewish descent, to continue studying because those two were not technically allowed at university. And so everyone in their like group started to be concerned. At this point, they all live in Amsterdam or at, I don't know if it was university provided housing or what, but because everyone was so nervous, they began to like perform a lot worse on their exams and stuff. And as a result of their declining performance, all of their parents, I think, separately came to the decision that we're going to stop helping you pay for rent. And so pretty soon, eventually, they all kind of went back to live with their parents, but they all lived in the area, right?
Sure.
So it wasn't like they stopped going to university.
Can I pause for just 1 second to draw a comparison to like what daily life during this time might look like? And like how we actually functionally move through it, and why when people like Maya and I are like increasingly concerned about like some of the like parallels we're seeing, we're not necessarily instantly jumping to like January 1945.
Right,
We're
right.
talking about like February 1941. And so here's my comparison. You mentioned like a lot of people like keep working for the Dutch government
sign
after
the
the
things,
affidavit. We have friends who work at the National Federal Energy Lab,
Yeah.
right? And that's either a federal branch or receives federal funding for their independent research or whatever. And I don't fault my friends at all for doing
No,
that like
yeah.
really important research, but also like they are part of the federal government. Like
They are, yeah.
they're federal employees right now, right? Like we are increasingly concerned about like the way like our speech is like policed, and like you're starting to see when ICE agents showed up at the airports, like people telling you like, hey, like turn off your phone, things like that. But then
Right.
like life still kind of continued, and you know you do see like movements and protest against. You know, like we saw up in Minneapolis during the ICE raid of that city for forever. But at the same time, you see lots of people joining the ranks of ICE because they're like morally not complicated by what it's doing.
And the money is good.
And want the money. And like
Yeah.
the money's good and the paycheck's good. And it gives you a chance to get out of your community for a little bit. And so it's like all of this inertia is they have done a really good job of slowly corrupting my daily life to make me an accomplice to this
everything
larger
that's happening.
machine.
Yeah.
And that's the concern that we're
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah.
The like policing of media that should otherwise be independent, right? Consequences for Stephen Colbert's show's been canceled, right? Like it's gonna go. The consequences for speaking
Yeah.
out, the rewards for staying in line,
Yeah.
right? The like way we all get. I mean, I myself feel just so morally complicated about paying federal income tax right now
Same.
to a government that I believe is about to commit war crimes against
Except
the
they
country in
owed
the Middle
us
East.
money this year, and that was incredible.
Sure, but I certainly gave them more than they gave back to
That's
me,
fair,
you know?
yeah, yeah.
And there's no mechanism for me to like opt out of income tax because of
Is there not?
no.
You can change your like the rate that you pay per.
Like how much I withhold and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. But like I work for a local municipality
yeah.
who will continue to collect and send to the federal
fair, yeah.
government what they need or risk their own federal
Yeah,
funding,
right.
you know?
Yeah. It's nuts.
And so just like the world that you're talking about right now of Amsterdam and the Netherlands of 1941, it should feel relatively easy to draw comparisons to.
Yeah.
And we know how that story ends.
Yeah.
And so we view that now as like these huge red flashing lights for like, get out, change. Like you have like, it's going to get worse next year. And then it's going to get unspeakably worse the year after
Yeah.
that. And why we are concerned here, because we're like, without the next 3 years being written, without it being history,
Yeah.
and yet the
How can we
future,
tell that
how
it's-
can we change?
Yeah.
How can we put a stick on the track that maybe bumps the train off?
Yeah. It's just nuts that like every time something horrific happens, it's like, oh, well, I got a dentist appointment next week and I really should go to bed early tonight. And like, who's going to walk the dogs? It's like, that's fucking insane to me.
Sure. But even more so, like my individual act of bravery maybe saves no one and puts me as a person who wants to resist
Yes.
this at increased economic
Risk, yeah.
insecurity, increased health insecurity, right?
Yeah.
It isolates me and takes me away from a respected member of community who's employed and like works with the community to fringe and scrambling to,
Yeah.
you know, pay my bills, stuff like that. The
It's
calculation
crazy.
becomes very easy to just do nothing.
Very difficult.
Even for some of these Dutchmen to not only not partake in the strike, but to take one of the probably better paying jobs in
Yes.
Germany
Yeah,
to send money back, you know?
Exactly. Yep. So they all end up going back to move in with their parents, or Yo and her friends. May 9th of 1942, so we're now in the following year, Jews are forced to wear a yellow star on their clothing in public. At this point, Yo kind of amps up her game. She's, like 19, 20 or something at this point. She starts to just steal ID cards off of non-Jewish people when they were like left in an unguarded location, like in the changing room at a swimming pool or in the cloakroom. She would then give these cards to Jewish people who like looked similar to the photo, or give them to resistance organization she was connected to,
Right.
who could then forge like identification papers.
Who can change the photo, but the number's still good.
Yes, exactly. A friend of Yo, whose name is Erna, who is one of the people that would forge the ID cards, said, quote, "If a personal identification card was needed for a woman of about 40 years of age, Yo would take care of it within an hour."
Wow.
That woman got shit done.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah. Yo also would help her two Jewish friends that I mentioned earlier, Feline and Sonia, go into hiding, as well as many other Jewish girls, oftentimes even letting them stay with her parents. February 6th of 1943, every student at Amsterdam University had to sign a declaration of loyalty, declaring, quote, "to observe the laws and regulations in force to the best of their knowledge and belief and to refrain from any action directed against the German Empire." The difference with this thing that they had to sign is that now it's directed at the entire, like, educated body, all of the university students. And so Yo, as well as over 85% of the students, did not sign the declaration. And as a result, the entire university kind of was put on hold. So schooling continued illegally, and like classes and exams and everything were held at undisclosed locations. And this is how Yo ended up completing her degree. This is Yo near her parents' home at the time that she was going to university.
I mean, stylish as
I
hell.
know, yeah.
Has absolutely grown up to a woman that will walk these streets.
And she has bright red hair, remember?
Good for her.
I know, right?
Love the texture of that coat.
Yeah. Incredible. So that's Yo. We're now going to go back a little bit because we kind of dropped off on the Oversteegen sisters. Because what happens with the Oversteegen sisters is that in 1941, so we're now like 2 years prior to where we just were, a man in a hat and a gray suit comes to the door inquiring after the sisters. Both the sisters remember that he looked like a movie star with like kind of the way he was dressed. This was Commander Frans Vanderwiel of the Haarlem Resistance Group. And he was there to ask the girls and their mother, more importantly, if he could recruit Hannie and Truus. So Treintje would proceed to make extensive inquiries around, like with her contacts or whoever she could talk to about this man, Frans Vanderwiel. And eventually it came back that he was a trustworthy guy. And so she agreed, and the girls, I think, were down.
Happy to do it.
Happy to do it. And so after he agreed, he told them, like, you won't just be like flyering or stuff. He had seen them flyering with his mom, which is why he tracked them down. He wanted them to do more things like sabotaging railway lines and stuff like that, because he's thinking they're young girls. They can sneak under the radar pretty easily. This, if you want to read in the box.
Yeah. And who am I?
This is just a narrator perspective, I think.
The second time, Truus and Hannie met with Frans again. They were surprised when he suddenly aimed a gun at them. He told the girls they had been set up and that he was from the Gestapo, the secret state police. Aiming his pistol at them, Frans demanded the girls give him the address of a Jewish man. Truus and Hannie protested fiercely and started kicking and hitting Frans. Frans cried out that it was a test and they had passed it brilliantly. They were found suitable for resistance work.
So apparently Frans got like a bloody nose and a black eye from them. Like, that's how aggressively they came at him.
He was trying to test them, and they jumped him into the resistance.
They were like, get fucked!
Nice.
As like, what, like 15, 18-ish years old around this point? Yeah. So this cell that Frans is working with is a 7-person resistance, and it utilized Hannie and Truus specifically because they were still young. And Hannie specifically, the younger one, when she was wearing braids, which she usually did, looked even younger than she was just because of her face. And this meant officials were less likely to suspect them of working with the resistance. Hannie began to go by Freddie, which is what we'll call her for the rest of the episode, because, quote, women do not go into resistance. And she wanted to have something that was less conspicuous, I guess. So on the left is Truus, and on the right is our cunty little Freddie.
This is so funny because Truus absolutely has an Uzi back there.
Yeah.
Truus looks like she'd proudly be a member of ELF, the Earth's Liberation Front.
Yeah, she does.
Truus in 100 years will set fire to veiled sea resorts. Meanwhile, Freddie, formerly Hannie, now Freddie, like hair curled as a bow, has the puffiest little sweater possible. For a girl that looked like she was selling cigarettes at the Kit Kat Club, she has absolutely been like, I'm just a girl.
She's so pretty.
Meanwhile,
Both of them are so
Truus
pretty.
is like, give us all the money.
Freddie Hannie's the pretty distraction. Truus gets the job done.
100%.
Yeah.
Truus blows it up, and then while skiing past the ski lodge, Freddie, whose job has been to distract people, is like, "Bye, suckers!" and is like skiing down with Truus. Sorry, they're just like they look so
characters.
Nordic.
Yes, they really do. They really do.
I know the Netherlands is not Norway or Scandinavia. I know those are different countries. I'm just saying the black turtleneck be given. Okay?
Yeah. So in 1943, we're now back up to where we left Yo. Yo registers for the Council of Resistance. She's already kind of doing resistance work of her own.
Leave it to the Dutch, who even in resistance, we're going to need to register you.
We're going to need to keep track of something. So she registers at the Council of Resistance, which goes by the acronym RVV. I think that translates to a Dutch phrase that I did not write down. So specifically, she said that helping people in hiding with money and with vouchers was not enough for her. She wanted to offer more support, quote, if necessary, with weapons.
Nice. And I don't know, someone else said, I'd shoot a guy.
Yo's like, give me the gunpowder, please. Stealing is not enough. I'm not injuring anyone. So her first assignment.
Yo's first assignment?
Yeah.
Okay, so back to the single child again.
Yes, Yo.
Not the two sisters.
No,
but
the
back
two
to Yo
sisters
now.
have been in the resistance now for 2 years. Her first assignment is to kill
Beautiful.
an SD officer. SD is like the intelligence arm of the SS. SD officer with a fellow member of the resistance. I didn't write down his name, but so they track this guy down. Yo is terrified the entire time, but ends up being able to pull the trigger when the time comes. And no bullet fires. That man is Frans van der Veel. He had done it again.
They test. Imagine if on the way in, Yo had just been a bit more type A and been shooting. She'd been like, "Oh my God, there's no bullets in here. Thank God I brought a huge knife."
And sometimes in the story, I'm like, yeah, Yo would have done it. Yeah.
Franz, I do believe, was a resistance fighter, but also maybe low-key a freak.
Dying?
Was low-key a little bit, what if tonight we cosplayed me dying? And Brian Nome's like, that's interesting. We're cosplaying?
Can we...
Bring it together.
Yeah, add some balloons in there, maybe. Okay. Yeah, so her target had been Frans van der Veel the whole time. This was all a test. Yo is fucking furious. The stories go that she was like literally crying tears. She was so angry. But she was like, "You son of a bitch, I'm in." And so she continues her resistance work and changes her name from Yo, which is I think a more feminine name, to the name Hannie. I'm not sure if Hannie is less feminine, but she starts going by Hannie, and so now we'll call her Hannie.
Is there elements where they're going by different names to also obscure, at least in part, their identity?
Yeah, because Hannie is not close to any part of her name. Freddie is actually going by her first name, which is the difference.
Right now, if you had to go by a secret code name as part of the resistance, what are you going as?
Fox.
I'm going as Brian. Gnome. Brian Gnome. Kidding. I'm definitely not doing that. Fox is such a good name. If you're Fox, I'm Hound.
Oh,
nice.
I like that.
I think it also just kind of works for our body types, to be completely honest. Like,
you've seen Bowser.
Real. Yeah. We're Fox.
He's on
and
a
Hound.
diet. Okay, the last little bit before we'll get really into these three that will become a trio. The summer of 1943, Franz sends Hannie to go contact Freddie and Truus. Freddie and Truus had kind of moved to a separate area. They were living in a hospital, I think, maybe with their mom. Anyway, so Hannie goes, disguises herself as a nurse, and like is able to kind of pull them away. She says Franz, but doesn't say the full van der Veel name for like security. And so Franz had sent Hannie there so that they could all work together because he thought they're the three women in all of Dutch resistance. So yeah, you should work together. That's not entirely true, but we'll get into it. And so all three of them are in this like private room in the hospital, and all three of them have their guns kind of ready because no one knows who to trust. And so no one's talking.
Amazing.
And so what do you do when you've been in an awkward situation for too long? Start laughing?
Oh, okay. I was going to say, like, do you guys want to know how my childhood shaped a really interesting personality?
So they all start laughing at the ridiculousness of this,
Nice.
partially because at least two of them are, I think, still minors, or at least one of them is still a minor.
Two of them are definitely sisters.
Yes, two of them are definitely sisters. And they just realize the ridiculousness of the situation.
Sure.
And there was so much tension and anxiety, I think, in all three of these bodies that when they started laughing, they were like crying. They were laughing so hard.
Well, they're also what, 17, 18 years
around,
old?
like up to 20, I think.
Okay.
But yeah. So Freddie initially remembers believing that she's like, oh, this bitch? Really? Like, we're definitely tougher than Hannie over here. Because Hannie seemed very sweet and gentle and was like kind of introverted and, quote, we assumed wrong, as it quickly turned out.
Hell yeah.
Franz van der Veel would later add that members of the resistance were also concerned that Hannie would not have what it took to do some of the dirtier work of the resistance. Quote, Hannie more and more turned out to be a courageous, enthusiastic girl who sometimes had to be restrained a bit for her own safety. Let me at him!
Literally.
Literally. And so the three of them ended up forming a very tight friendship and became sisters in arms.
Gorgeous.
We're now into our Meet the Team. Are you ready with your sound
Yes.
effects?
Ba, ba, da, ba.
We have Truus Oversteegen.
Amazing.
Ba, ba, da, ba.
I thought that came before you, surely.
Yep, sure. She is the decisive, down-to-earth leader.
Okay.
Next, we have Hannie Schaft.
Ba, ba, da, ba.
Nice. She is described as like the intellectual and the lawyer. And then we have Freddie Oversteegen, who is
Ba,
Hannie.
ba, da, ba.
Thanks. Okay. She is described as the intelligence, aka she would be the person behind the keyboard, you know,
Gotcha.
if we were in a modern spy movie.
Sure.
She's the one who will explore and map everything out in detail. And then Hannie and Truus, for the most part, will be the ones actually doing the sabotage or whatever it is. Hannie actually taught Freddie and Truus German and English. Neither of the sisters wanted to learn German because they were like, isn't that the bad guys? And Hannie
Yes, it
was
is.
like explaining why it would be useful that they can like then talk to the important
People they're
and
going to try to murder.
exactly. Well, saboteur.
Right.
The advantage that these three had over their male counterparts in the resistance world is their youth and beauty. One of their missions would be to act as Moffen girls, which were Dutch girls who had alleged relationships with German soldiers. Mof, M-O-F, was a derogatory term used at the time for the German soldier. It's a little unclear to me if women were Moffen girls by choice or if it was something else, but, you know. The girls would all put on makeup, so like mascara, powder, and like a bright lipstick done on them for the first time by Franz.
Amazing.
This man's got it all.
Has a lot of things going on. Very many interesting things about him.
Yeah, he's a guy for sure. I should have pulled a picture of him. He's also like handsome, but that's fine. Truus later remembered that it was her first time ever using makeup. Initially, the three would go to chat and flirt with German soldiers and other high-ranking officials, specifically at bars and restaurants and stuff, mainly to get intel that they could then pass on to the necessary people. Their primary task early on, aside from this, was distributing illegal material like newspapers. As they continued, the scope of the tasks would increase, and so they began also distributing weapons, stealing more ID cards, much to Hannie's happiness, I guess, and also forging papers. Other duties of the resistance were, quote, bringing Jewish refugees to a new hiding place, so like transferring them from one place to another. Also working in the emergency hospital in Enschede. I don't know how to pronounce that. And also blowing up railway lines between, Imuiden and Haarlem. I had such good pronunciation guides for so many words, and we're now coming to the part of the story where I stopped doing that.
There's so much Dutch in this story.
There were full sections. I was reading this book and I was like, I didn't understand any of that because my brain saw a big word, can't read, and skipped the line.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So they sabotaged bridges and railway lines with dynamite. They would also don disguises in order to smuggle Jewish children across the country, or in some cases, out of concentration camps. Freddie, however, was not allowed to do this because A, she liked to wear her hair in those pigtails, which made her look a lot younger. And she also just generally had a darker complexion than the other two girls. That could make her be considered, or it, like on first glance, there's like more of a chance that someone would think she was Jewish. So she was not allowed to do it. But Hannie and Truus were. The women were particularly well suited for this because a woman holding a child's hand did not draw nearly as much attention as a man holding a child's hand, especially if they don't look alike. They also mapped out parts of the German coastal defense, specifically in something called the Atlantic Wall. Do you know what that is?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about it?
Sure. After conquering Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, and France, and then failing to capture the United Kingdom, which is an island, Hitler has the entire like North Atlantic coast from France all the way to kind of like Denmark, fortified with bunkers and artillery cannons and things like that. The idea being like any beach invasion, they will be able to repel. And so having scopes on that, like what that defense looks like, is crucial if you need to be able to crack it.
That's true. Okay. So they would gather intel on this German defense. Specifically, Haarlem is closer to the coast than Amsterdam is. So I think that was also made it also a little bit easier. The defensive line spanned over 5,000 kilometers, which is over 3,100 miles. And it was in case of an attack from the Allied forces. The information would then be passed on to the government, which was still in exile in London. And it would later allow the Allied forces to bomb these specific defenses and key locations. And then the trio also gathered information on a German unmanned flying bomb, which would have been used to bomb London at the time. This next section is called Learning the Dirty Work. Then they started upping the ante on the girls. They started helping Franz, quote unquote, liquidate, aka assassinate, Nazis,
Nice.
SS members, SD members, SP members, whatever, and other Dutch collaborators. So most of the Dutch population either like disagreed with the occupation or was like kind of neutral about the occupation. An estimated 5% of the Dutch population were collaborators. So not only did they agree with the occupation, they were also willing to act on it. And these are people who would betray people who were in hiding from the German invaders and also worked in conjunction with the occupying forces.
A lot of the occupying countries saw the birth of like their own regional Nazi party. So like these people all probably also joined like the Dutch Nazi Party, for example. Exactly.
Jesus Christ. So one of their first missions, I think actually their first mission where they were assigned to liquidate someone was with Franz. And so it started out with Truus dressing up as a muffin girl. I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce that. And she was sent into a bar to flirt with a high-ranking German SS officer. She seductively suggested a romantic walk through a nearby woods, suggesting that her uncle owned an area of like private wooded area that would be even more secluded. And so they end up going out there with the promise of something more. And Freddie's on the lookout somewhere nearby. I think this is probably before Hannie got brought into the picture. At some point, Franz steps out of the woods ahead of them and says, "Girl, you're not supposed to be here." The assumption is this is the uncle saying, like, you can't be here. So the officer turns around, like apologizes, and then both of them turn around, at which point Franz shoots him in the back of the head.
Right.
This is one of the main things that this trio is going to be known for today, which is frustrating. This is the initial thing that I saw that I was like,
what a cool story.
What an incredible story. And now I'm like, that's not even the story, you know? Like, this is incredible and so wild to me that these people were like, we need young women to do this work successfully. And so they brought these people in that they knew could fly under the radar. But like, that's not all they did. And they did some other like crazy shit. So stay with us.
And also, while like shooting a Nazi in the back of the head is like maybe one of the most emotionally satisfying parts of this story so far, like war machines being what they are, he was replaced.
Yep.
And people will probably experience consequence for the death of a Nazi.
Yes.
Meanwhile, other actions they did directly contributed to saving the lives of various people.
Exactly.
Like in terms of like overall impact of action, other things they're doing are way more meaningful.
Yes, exactly. As a reminder, at this point, I think this is probably 1941, maybe 1942 or 1943, but Truus was under the age of 18 until 41. And Freddie was under the age of 18 until 1943. So not that I am trying to like be like, you should feel bad that a Nazi is dying, but like not only that, this is like, I think a middle-aged man that's coming on to this girl who could easily be under 18.
Could very easily be his daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Disgusting. Even if it was like a younger person, like what the gross. Anyway, quote, this is a quote, I believe, from Truus. It was a necessary evil, killing those who betrayed the good people. After the killing of this first officer, a German truck began to approach, and so the group had to run, accidentally leaving a petrified Freddie behind. Luckily, Freddie was not spotted, but Truus came back to her, and she was still in the same location, shaking like a leaf, and had peed her pants because she was so scared. Yeah. So now you're maybe seeing why Freddie does more of the pre-work than the actual work. But either way, I think there was a lot of talk and crying between the sisters all the time, especially because they weren't allowed to tell their mom what they were doing for security reasons. Right. They're, So eventually all three girls, including Hannie, would start to take lessons on how to use their guns. I think they had been given guns very early on, but maybe not strategically, more like you should have this just in case something goes down. So now they're actually learning how to shoot them. They're learning from a dentist in the dentist's backyard. Just to show that like these are still young people who act like humans. They always meet the dentist at the back of the house. At one point, for whatever reason, they're like, next time we meet, you need to come in through the front or whatever. So they ring the doorbell. And then a woman answers and they realize they have the wrong house because there is a huge portrait of Hitler right behind her.
Oh my God.
And all three girls burst out laughing. The woman is very confused and the girls walk away. And I just think that's
actually very funny.
So funny.
And also horrifying.
Horrifying. Like you're already nervous because you're meeting in this covert situation to learn how to use guns to overthrow a government. And you open a door almost directly into the face of Hitler.
Right.
Anyway, after learning to shoot, the sisters and Hannie would be sent on assassination missions by themselves, often using the same playbook as before. Freddie would be the first to shoot and kill someone. I don't know how.
Whoa, that's a surprise.
Yeah. We don't know to this day how many people this trio liquidated, but there it is. Freddie said, quote, "It was tragic and very difficult, and we cried about it afterwards." Later on, they would primarily focus on Dutch collaborators, the people that were arresting or endangering Jewish refugees and resistance members. They did the shooting, but they, quote, "did not bury them. The tough men did that."
Nice.
So apparently
digging a hole is so hard.
Exactly. And like stripping them and there's just so much involved that they would do the shooting and then be like, okay, bye.
There was this comedian and he was like, digging a hole is one of the hardest things a human has ever done before.
Yes.
So whenever you listen to a true crime podcast and you're like, the body was only half buried or like it was only like the hole was only like a foot deep. I've always heard that and been like, wow, like after
how
all
lazy.
this plan, like how lazy. And it's actually that might have just been as deep as that murderer was literally able to get into the ground.
Yeah. You don't think about how tall 6 feet is until you realize you have to be literally in over your head in a lot of situations. So Bas van der Bende Beckman, former researcher at the Netherlands Institute for War, Holocaust, and Genocide Studies about these girls said, quote, "They were unusual, these girls. There were a lot of women involved in the resistance in the Netherlands, but not so much in the way that these girls were. There are not that many examples of women who actually shot collaborators themselves. The Dutch resistance was believed to be, quote, a man's effort in a man's war. And so if women were involved, they were likely not getting their hands dirty. They were likely handing out newspapers, printing stuff, harboring refugees, moving children around, that kind of stuff. Not like shooting and setting explosives and all that stuff. So they would ride on bicycles in North Holland, oftentimes concealing their firearms as groceries in their like little basket. They would follow the target on foot or on bike. In one scenario, I believe Freddie was riding a bike and Truus was on the back. And then Truus, I imagine she really slightly got off and approached a target and was like, "Are you so-and-so?" And she said yes. And then that person died.
Wow.
So death can come in all forms, I suppose.
Yeah.
In some instances, actually, I think a lot of instances, they learned how to shoot a target off of a moving bike while they were pedaling. That's the most
That's a
Dutch
good skill to
fucking
have.
thing I've ever heard.
Not a horse, not a speeding car,
Yeah.
a bicycle.
A bicycle. Like you're actively pedaling because you do need to get away
Ooh,
after you
right.
shoot.
I was thinking a two-seater situation,
No.
or you're on the back handlebars.
No, they were often separated so that one could do a shot and then the second could drive by and do a second shot if the first hadn't done the deed. That's just fucking insane to me. Not only did they go from like holding a gun and being like, what is gun? It's
Right.
blank. Why did you not die?
I am terrified.
Yeah, to being like, I can now shoot a man off of a moving bicycle. Freddie was known to be really good at following a target or keeping lookout during missions because she looked so young and unsuspecting. Quote, both sisters shot to kill, but they never revealed how many Nazis and Dutch collaborators they assassinated. According to Pleister, I'm not sure who that is, Freddie would tell people who asked that she and her sister were soldiers, and soldiers don't say how many people they've killed. They all had to come to terms with the cruelty of war. People would argue that there had to be another solution, but that wasn't really the case for a lot of these people. In one point, Freddie recalled seeing a person she had just shot fall to the ground, and she had the, quote, human impulse to want to help him. And Truus would later say, quote, we did not feel it suited us. I mean, it never suits anybody unless they are real criminals. One loses everything. It poisons the beautiful things in life. So I'm going to make, I know, these two were very, I don't know, eloquent. This next quote is going to be a longer one that I'm going to have Grant read. This is the only one I'm going to provide a trigger warning for. There is the death of an infant in it. So if you don't want to listen to it, skip forward. It is like, it does really contextualize what these people were going through in terms of like morality, especially when it comes to the resistance. So
this is from Truus. Quote, while I was biking, I saw Germans picking up innocent people from the streets, putting them against the wall, and shooting them. I was forced to watch, which aroused such an enormous anger in me, such a disgust, a feeling of, quote, dirty bastards. You can have any political convention or be totally against war, but at that moment, you are just a human being confronted with something very cruel. Shooting innocent people is murder. If you experience something like this, you'll find it justified to act against it. Once, I was confronted with an SS officer, a Dutch SS soldier even, who was killing a small baby by hitting it against a wall. He grabbed the baby and hit it against the wall. The father and sister had to watch. They were obviously hysterical. The child was dead. I shot that guy right there and then. That wasn't an assignment, but I don't regret it. I really don't regret what we did. You have to see it like this. We were dealing with cancerous tumors in society that you had to cut out like a surgeon. You couldn't say, hey, mister, you're doing it wrong, because then you would risk a bullet through your head. You couldn't arrest them. And you couldn't put them in prison or find a safe house for him because we needed it ourselves for the Jews and people who were in the resistance and had to leave. There was no solution. That is the cruelty of war.
Isn't that just like...
Yeah. Yeah.
Damn. Yeah. There was another situation that Truus said she was put in early on when she was part of the resistance with Franz. They were on a train and they had pulled into a stop, and she looked out the window that was like kind of fogged over, and she saw a man push down a woman who was holding a baby. And she knew in that moment that that baby had died. She remembered being filled with such rage that she was like, if I had a gun right now, I could kill them.
I'd do something.
I could do it, you know? And I think that was a big turning point for her. I think before that, she was having some moral conflictions about doing this kind of stuff. So all three of the women would continue their work of smuggling and moving children around. Most of the time, these missions of moving kids around went well, but there were times where it didn't go well, you know? And so not only are they having to move forward every day doing some of this horrible, like traumatizing work, but they're also like, it's hard to contextualize how much like trauma they must feel and be willing to do it again the next day,
right.
You know?
And then also like how much the rest of their life has to be traumatizing them such that this is worth that balance.
Right. Yeah. I think, yeah, it's wild to think how a 14-year-old could turn into this in the span of a couple years, you know?
Right.
Importantly, though, the three refused to fight anyone but actual fascists. For example, whenever they had an assignment, they did everything in their power to make sure they had the right person, oftentimes even asking their identity point blank before killing them. And also, they never agreed. I think they were asked to kidnap the children of some of the like higher ranking people, and they refused to do that point blank, saying that there is no need to involve children in this. The risk of discovery for these three was always quite high, and as a result, Hannie would always remain armed. I think it was technically against resistance rules to carry the weapon if you weren't on an assignment, but Hannie stayed strapped.
She stays strapped down.
Yeah. She was like, well, you never know. And before any assignment, she would always extensively brush her bright red hair and apply powder and lipstick so that, when Truus asked, in the case she was discovered and things went south, she would, quote, die beautifully. And I was like, okay.
How carefully are you doing your makeup if you're aware this might be your death makeup, you know?
You are paying more attention to it.
You are cat eyeing it, you know?
Yeah. Yes. There was a situation at one of the safe houses that was used for the resistance. It was actually a watch shop that I think it was Hannie. It was Freddie and Truus that were there. It happened to get raided. It was February 28th of 1944. It was raided. 30 people were taken prisoners. This watch shop happened to be harboring Jewish refugees, which happened to make it like not get discovered. And they ended up being able to hang out there until some sympathetic police officers were able to liberate them. Freddie and Truus were hidden and so weren't arrested, but like weren't hidden as well as the refugees and so had to make a quick escape. So literally, like a spy movie, they ran across the roofs.
Amazing.
And then at some point, Freddie crashed through a skylight into a mattress store. And so they just landed on mattresses.
That's so funny.
And had to spend the night there until the next morning. Anyway, the raids continued. Eventually, the headquarters of the RVV would be raided. And at some point,
what's the RVV?
The resistance cell that they're part of. And this house belonged to a man named Mari, I think. This is a quote from Mari about this raid. Quote, they just walked in. I mean, we barely got off the hook because everywhere in the house were things from the resistance. The laundry basket contained German uniforms, which he used for sabotage. They asked my son what was in the basket, and he remained dead calm and said it was dirty laundry. You could just see the guns lying around in my studio. And underneath one of my statues in the yard, I think this guy's an artist. Under one of my statues in the yard, there were many grenades. It is incomprehensible that they found nothing.
That's incredible.
I love when the police tell on themselves. Are you kidding?
Do you know, A, what this reminds me of, and B, a scene that I have thought about continually since I watched it, at kind of an impressional age. Did you ever watch the World War II Holocaust movie, The Pianist?
Oh, I might have, but it would have.
Okay.
It was a long time ago.
This scene comes from the first 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Nothing traumatic necessarily happens in this. There's no violence.
Yeah.
Scene happens within the first 20 minutes of the episode. The Nazis have taken over Warsaw, and your main character, the pianist for the local Polish radio station, is back home with the rest of his family, and they're talking about where they should hide their life savings because they've pulled it out of the bank, and they're like, we should hide it in the wall, we should hide it in a table leg or whatever. And one of the brother goes, we should just hide it under a newspaper on the table. And everyone's like, that's such a stupid idea. And he's like, they will never think to check there, but they'll turn everything else over. And I have thought about that as a reflection of the human. I don't know if that's the right answer or not, but I know I don't have an answer yet to is that the right answer or not?
I mean, he's got a point.
Yeah, right? Don't tuck it away in some books or whatever. Just put it here and then put the day's newspaper over it.
Yeah, because they're not going to be looking in plain sight. It's like me whenever I lose my phone, which is always. I don't. And Casey's like, it's in your hand.
Right.
And I'm like, well, I wasn't looking
the
there.
last place I was going to check. That's where I wanted it to be, not where I thought it was.
So anyway, they do not, the headquarters is compromised. So from here on out, this particular resistance cell will not have a headquarters. It will kind of meet all over the place.
Sure.
But Hannie's family and the Oversteegen's mother all understood vaguely what their children were doing. Were not allowed to know the details for obvious reasons. At some point, I think Hannie's parents are in one of the safe houses, but they still know nothing about what the operations are. While Hannie's parents were proud of her, they were also deeply concerned for her safety.
Yep.
At one time, her father even tried to put her under house arrest. Hannie no longer lived at that home. So obviously it didn't work. But just to give you an idea of kind of the terror I think some of the families were living in.
Yeah.
So now we'll talk the beginning of the end. What day was D-Day?
Ooh, June 6th, 1944.
Hell yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the end of the war?
Yeah, absolutely happy to. The Allies, which in this instance are U.S. and British forces mainly, although also helped with a shit ton of Polish soldiers that escaped Poland and Wojtek the Bear and French soldiers and things like that. They, in 1942, fight in North Africa and kind of start kicking the Germans out of that. 1943, moved to Italy. 1944, everyone kind of knows the big Allied push in the West is going to go on as the Soviets are fighting in the East.
Right.
That finally happens in June when the British and American, along with obviously some of these other forces, Canada's there, land in northern France in Normandy. That's the big D-Day moment.
Yes.
They break through the Atlantic Wall, which you mentioned in this episode, very quickly.
Yes.
And then they work very diligently to break out of that beachhead within the first couple of weeks. And kind of what happens in that moment is all of France opens up in the late summer of 1944 as the Germans retreat back as quickly as possible to the natural defenses along the German and French border of like rivers and forests, the River Rhine, things like that.
Yeah.
So the Germans kind of give up France pretty quickly and everyone's like, oh, the war's about to end. And then like resistance stiffens. The Allies will fight through the winter and then the war ends in 1945. In Europe specifically, it ends in early April 1945. What's really interesting is that the Germans held on to parts of the Netherlands up until the very end.
Yeah.
And that is because the Nazis had been so convinced that the British and Americans were going to land in Rotterdam to use the port that they had fortified it so much that for the Allies, it basically became this like Nazi troop sink that they could like isolate and move around, and it helps achieve war goals, which is great for war goals and horrible for the Netherlands, who will experience during that like period of isolation one of the worst moments of like famine and starvation. Yeah, so I mean like the Netherlands was an occupied territory, so already some of its food that it was producing was being shipped back to Germany. Those rations that they were allowed to keep gets worse and worse throughout the war, just like it does everywhere.
Right.
And then, of course, when the war is clearly over, but the Nazis are still in charge of the Netherlands, there's really nothing to stop the cruelty at that point.
Right.
And so the remaining Nazi forces in the Netherlands basically kind of eat all the food. And also there's like kind of like a crop failure and it's like kind of like a cold winter.
Yeah.
And it's hard for the Allies to get aid there because their troops and whatever are elsewhere. And like thousands of Dutch people die. Do you have a hard number?
It said over 4,000.
Yeah. For a country that's already ravaged by war and occupation, like it's just this horribly sad period at a time period when everyone knows that the end is near. For the
20,000. Jesus, I'm sorry.
I was like, I thought it was over 10,000.
I was thinking 4,000 was a different number. I don't know what it was.
Yeah,
20,000.
In my mind, I was like, I know it was over 10. So you said 4. I was like, well, I'm glad I didn't say the number. But yeah, okay, yeah.
20.
It's just such a sad moment as the Dutch starve to death right when everyone knows the war's over, but it's not. And so you have this weird moment where you're like, you want to resist, but also it's like, if I just hold out, if I just keep my head down, right? If we just whatever.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, your occupiers are increasingly erratic.
Yes.
And then there's this whole starvation that happens in the winter of 44 into 45, which kills a lot of old people and a lot of young people.
And also doesn't help. They were on energy rations as well. They only got like 2 hours of gas a day, I think. And then like electricity was cut off pretty early on.
Yeah.
So D-Day happens. In my mind, I'm like, great, that's the end. And then I forget there's this like whole disarmament period and then the like rest of getting this back. And then there's the Pacific Theater. And anyway, June 8th, 1944. This is after D-Day. Hannie is sent on a mission alongside a man named Jan Boonkamp. I don't know if that's how you actually pronounce it. It seems phonetic. Jan Boonkamp. These two are often paired from the beginning, from when she joined in 43. So like for a year now. And this obviously when she wasn't paired with the Oversteegens. Side note, Jan was married with a daughter, but there are unfounded rumors that Jan and Hannie had an affair, but it is still very possible that they fell in love.
Okay.
If that makes sense. At this time for this particular mission on June 8th in 44, their target was a confectioner named Piet Faber, who had been collaborating with his 2 sons who were serving in the SS. He was biking when the pair attacked him, and he died a few days later in the hospital. Shortly after, an article is published in the German-controlled newspaper, quote, "Savagery. May the cowardice of the murder of a defenseless man be brought to light and horrified at the thought that it is here a woman who is guilty of transgressing the life to the production of which God calls the woman." Hi, there was a man there too, like...
But a woman who famously makes life, she's the one that ended it.
And
isn't
has
that
red
interesting?
hair. Don't forget that. Has red hair. June 12th, 44, Yanni and Han...
4 days later.
4 days later, Yanni and Hannie and Jan. Jesus. Hannie and Jan were given another target, Officer Ragut, R-A-G-U-T, who is a member of the SP in Amsterdam, so secret police. So this is when they have to start like planning the liquidation. They're not actually going to do the liquidation for another like nine-ish days. However, the day that they are assigned this is the day a lot of fellow resistance members are executed, probably affecting the like mental state of both of these individuals. One of whom, I thought this was just interesting, was a man named Gerrit van der Veen. He was an important member of the resistance, and in March of 1943, he had attempted to burn down the building that held the population register. He had only half succeeded, and ultimately it did not have a large effect because, unfortunately, they had a copy of that register in another building, but it is still considered one of the larger and most important acts of resistance in the Netherlands around this time. So June 21st, 1944, Hannie comes to Truus in a panic, saying that Jan has been caught. The plan had been to intercept Officer Ragut while he was biking, and Hannie would be the first to shoot and bike away, and then Jan would fire the second shot. What actually happened is unclear. There are 2 versions of the story. The first version, I think from an historian, is that Hannie completed her first shot, and then when Jan went to shoot, Ragut returned fire, and that hit Jan in the abdomen. Frans van der Wiel's version is that Jan actually had the first shot, and he thought that the officer was dead after that shot. And so he just biked away, not really thinking about it. And then Hannie was like hot on his tails. She saw the officer pulling himself up and with his last bit of strength, firing a shot at Jan in the back. And then he passed away. But what is agreed upon is that both Hannie and Jan fled the scene, not together. And so...
As is popular training.
Yes. And so Hannie believes Jan has been caught because she saw him get shot. And so when she arrives to Truus, she's upset with herself for not going back to help Jan. And a day later, the 2 are trying to like figure out where Jan might have ended up, and they see him at a hospital getting carried in on a stretcher. And Hannie is wearing a headscarf specifically to conceal her bright red hair. What had ended up happening, the result is that he had been shot in the abdomen and spine, and afterwards, he had, in a panic, knocked on a random door hoping for help, and unfortunately, those people were not friendly or sympathetic to his case, and they alerted the...
Local authorities.
Yeah, the SD. And Jan ended up passing away in the hospital. While in the hospital, it's believed that a nurse who pretended to be a part of the resistance asked Jan if there was anything she could do for him. Jan may have mentioned Hannie's name and her address of one of the safe houses, Van Doorstraat. Frans van der Wiel also thought Jan may have had a photo of Hannie in his pocket. So the resistance after this ordered Hannie to go into hiding and not return to that safe house, Van Doorstraat. A week later, the secret police did in fact raid that location. Hannie's parents were taken then and sent to a concentration camp with the hope that...
Hannie's parents were?
Hannie's parents. And the hope was that Hannie would come and try to retrieve her parents. Allegedly, at this point, Hitler was also demanding that she be tracked down. I will say now, the parents, they end up getting released. I'm a little confused on timeline because one source said they were released after the war. Another implied that they were not held for really all that long. But regardless, the fact that they kept the parents in the dark was actually a huge boon at this point, because it was pretty quick for the officers to realize that they had no information on their daughter.
Right.
So this is Hannie's disguise. She dyed her hair black, I think straightened it maybe after this photo, and then wore fake glasses made of...
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she looks very different.
For a woman who is like gorgeous, she looks like she coaches basketball. Like that's
derogatory.
I mean, a little.
Yeah.
Like, listen, some of there's gorgeous people and all, you
Yes.
know.
Yeah.
But you can't tell me that face hasn't screamed, "Hands up, ladies! Hands up!"
Yeah. I actually have no fucking notes. Hannie was also given new ID cards relatively recently, back in March, from a reliable official down in town hall, and those ID cards were for a Johanna Elderkamp, which was a woman born in Zurich, so an identity that ideally the Germans would kind of
Overlook.
brush right past. Yep. Hannie considered turning herself in a panic to get her parents released, but Truus and Freddie talked her out of it, telling her that there's no way the Germans actually release them if you turn yourself in. And
if anything, your parents are going to be, because it'll be proof positive that you
exactly. So luckily, Freddie and Truus were right. Hannie's parents were released due to lack of information on the whereabouts of their daughter. Hannie ended up moving to a different safe house with Truus. It was a family that had 2 sons. One of the sons remembers, quote, "Hannie was always very friendly. She was very sweet to me. She helped me with my homework," which I just thought very sweet. This is also a longer one. I just feel like it humanizes Hannie. This is a letter Hannie wrote to Feline, one of her Jewish friends from university, September 4th, 1944.
And Feline is in hiding somewhere, or?
Yeah, at a different safe house,
Cool.
I believe.
Dear Feline, since my pen still leaks, I will write with pencil. I just washed my hands. The fact that you haven't heard from me for so long isn't my fault. The previous letter from 2 weeks ago had to be torn apart at some point. I really like it that you're doing so well. This could have been different, very different. I'm in the very best of health. Since a few weeks, I am back in function just in time. Otherwise, I would have gone mad. I'm in a very sad spiritual state. I can't read a book, a novel, or study a book. In my spare time, I knit socks. Does that sound familiar to you? I am considerably less tough than I thought. Being confronted with death was not easy. And in this case, it was very direct. Unemployment since then has not exactly calmed me down either. And now it's too late. I will try to save the debris of my old self, but that probably isn't possible anymore. People are in such a party mood. I am there like a smiling Buddha, and they expect me to be in a party mood too. I would rather swear. Unfortunately, I can only do that with you and a few other people. When the war is over, and you're crying in a corner, I will come to you to do this activity. Dear child, I would like to come to you, but you understand that I cannot leave at the moment. So it will have to be after the war. When will that be? Maybe on my birthday. Now I'm being melodramatic. If I don't see you at all anymore, I will give you some guidelines for the future. A, solidarity. B, continuation of all our work. We are just a 2 unity, and intellect is desperately needed for our cause and our social conversion, or demolition. C, don't think anything cowardly of my friend. He behaved beautifully. You would hope there would be more people like him. He was one of the finest guys I ever met. Remember this. It is very important. Feline, see you soon. Warm regards, Hannie. Mm-hmm. Have you ever had an older person write you a letter? And when I say older person, I don't mean like derogatory. I mean like older person who would have in their life at some point legitimately communicated via letter.
I think so, but I can't think of like a particular instance.
It's just the way any letters from anybody written at a time when that was a legitimate way to communicate should be uploaded to the internet and studied by men and women under the age of 30 and how to text people. Because my aunt used to send me letters at college all the time.
Yes.
The same one who would include like Subway.
Yeah, the one that you just had to
certificates.
like write her name and then the like city that she lived in.
Yeah. Well, the village she lived near. But yes, because her letters they would just kind of ramble. And I remember talking to my mom because I'd obviously not like, that wasn't a part of like my coming up. But I was like, you just kind of give people multiple access points for conversations throughout all of
Yes.
it, which is what that letter
There's
isn't
just so
aimless.
many little,
It's,
like-
yeah. When do you think the war will
Yeah.
end? How are you?
Yeah.
What do you think of my friend? Right?
Yeah,
Like,
this is literally how I've had to start journaling because otherwise I wouldn't do it. It just has to be bullet points.
and what's so funny to me is my mom will read text messages from a different aunt of mine, obviously one of her
Yeah.
sisters, and it's so rambly in text form. And it took me a really long time to understand that this aunt is Aunt LaDonna, is just typing out how she would write a letter to a friend. Which is why
Right.
there's like questions that don't seem to go anywhere and an immediate change of topic afterwards, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like in one breath, my aunt would be like, "We have new kittens on the farm. You should come down and name them. Do you have any naming suggestions? How's classes?"
And
like,
it's like, okay.
yeah, in retrospect, it's like, oh, what a wonderful, like, multiple
Yeah.
opportunities to just like jump in. And I love that letter for that reason
Yeah.
too. It's so like it's not top secret
Like
war
she's
correspondence.
talking about the little things going on in her life. She's talking about her emotional state. There's clearly inside jokes. Like, in my spare time, I knit socks. Does that sound familiar to
Right.
you? Like, that feels like an inside joke.
But also here in June of 1944, you see the Dutch people. They're like, this war is going to
September,
end.
but yeah.
Right. Sorry, because it comes after the attack in June. But
Yeah.
like they're like, this war is going to end soon. But like, when will it end? And
Yeah,
how
so
do we get to
everyone's
the
been
end?
excited. Do
Yeah.
you know about Mad Tuesday?
No.
Okay. I didn't write a ton about it, but Mad Tuesday was the day after Yo wrote this letter, or Hannie wrote this letter. The Netherlands thought liberation was coming. Basically, one of the resistance like radio networks, one of the illegal ones, according to the Germans, had broadcast that the Canadian forces were like on their way. They were not. But basically everyone was like in the streets, like celebrating, and then obviously they were not liberated that day
Right.
or the next day.
Is this also around the time of Operation Market Garden?
I think so, yeah.
Because the Allies do make a legitimate attempt to try
Yes.
to liberate the Netherlands using paratrooper
Right,
troops.
right.
And they have some limited success early on. And so then some Dutch people do reveal themselves. They're like, oh, haha, like
Yes.
I'm the resistance and this is a great day for us. And then the
caused them to
Germans,
die.
right, with this
Get killed.
massive force, I think some resistance fighters retreat with the Allies because
Yeah,
they're able to
possible,
largely pull most of their troops out.
Yeah.
But obviously the Nazis retake control.
Yeah, exactly. So Mad Tuesday happens. Following this, Hitler and his forces began stricter measures against resistance fighters, shooting even if they were unarmed. The western and northern regions of the Netherlands, which is where Haarlem and Amsterdam are, were not liberated before winter hit. The PM of the Netherlands, from his exile in London, ordered a general railway strike in support of the Allied forces. The Germans, in response, claimed most modes of transportation, leading to a major food shortage, resulting in a famine, the winter of 1944 to 45, also known as Hunger Winter. By September of 1944, they were limited to 2 hours of gas a day, and by October, electricity was entirely cut off. In Hunger Winter, as Grant talked about, an estimated 20,000 people died from malnutrition and cold. Hannie and Truus were able to get by due to their host family. I'm not 100% sure if Freddie was with them or not, but their host family that they were staying with, or the resistance people, they had previously lived in the Dutch East Indies, and they were able to turn tulip bulbs into a semi-edible Indonesian meal. There were several resistance organizations operating at this time. Up until this point, I didn't really see mentions of them, at least in the sources that I read. I'm sure they interacted in some form or another, but I think with this increased pressure from the Germans, they started interacting with and relying on each other's systems more. I mean, RVV at the earlier stages was 7 people, so I can't
Right.
imagine it's huge now, and I can't imagine that it's any of the other cells are huge either. And yeah, so during the winter, you would think that the resistance efforts would slow down or stop because it's wintertime and people are literally starving in the streets. But that's not necessarily the case. In fact, Truus and Hannie, I believe, attempted to blow up one German line, like railway line, didn't succeed or only kind of succeeded, and then did successfully blow up another railway line, which prevented all travel for weeks. There's a thing that the Germans would do when the resistance acted out and assassinated one of the Nazis or SS or whoever. And I don't remember the term that the book used. I want to say it was like retaliation, but it might have been something slightly different. So March 1st of 1945, so we're now into the following year, Hannie and Truus are assigned to liquidate a man named Willem Zirkzee, who is a police inspector who is working closely with the SD. In response to this killing, the Nazis took 15 men who were in prison in Amsterdam out of the prison to like a city center in Haarlem and executed them all in front of the people. And the goal here was to like turn the public against the resistance, saying you keep doing this and it keeps resulting in just more of us dying,
right.
you know? So, I mean, obviously it's not going to sway the resistance fighters. So March 15th, 1945, the pair, Hannie and Truus, were sent to liquidate Co Longengeek. I'm just going to call him Co, who was a hairdresser who had been giving intelligence to the SD in exchange for money.
It's also super telling that just from the stories that we have confirmed, Hannie has killed like 4 or 5 people at least.
Well, I'll explain more of that in a second. But so Co, a hairdresser, had been giving intelligence to the SD in exchange for money and then later joined the SS. I think it's also important to remember that Freddie did most of the pre-work.
Sure.
And then Hannie and Truus seem to be doing most of the actual assassinations. So the two go after Co. He is now working with the SS. He gets shot in the head and back.
Oh, shit.
And survives.
Gross.
I know! Truus and Hannie have to think fast. Basically, his fiance is there, and so she starts immediately screaming for the police, and so they have to, like, book it out of there. They enter a nearby bar, one that they know is not loyal to the resistance. It's worded as they know it's not trustworthy. Truus pulls her gun and basically holds this fucking bar up.
Beautiful.
She shouts, "Gentlemen, your attention, please. We are coming in now, but when the Germans come in, we've been here all afternoon. If you don't behave the way we want you to, and we're on our way to heaven, we'll take a few of you with us.
Oh, yeah.
We don't intend to give up." She's 22.
Incredible. Which is just the perfect age to do something reckless
Like that. Yeah. Fucking iconic. And Hannie's in the back like, "Please don't look at me."
Crystal clear morals on this. Absolute perfect
Gun
game plan
in hand.
instantly.
Yeah. They both order drinks, drink some to make their alcohol or their breath smell like alcohol. And then a high-ranking German officer walks in. And Truus she flirts with him obnoxiously. Like she's hanging off of him. And she is so annoying and so vulgar that he leaves.
Gorgeous.
That's the kind of game I want.
It can't be a woman.
It can't be a woman.
I know I was just told that it was a woman.
It can't be
but
this
a woman
woman.
did tell me it was a woman.
Interesting.
Well, I gotta get out of here. Gotta go ask any men if they saw anything. Gotta go ask some men if they saw a man do this.
Yeah. Just gotta make sure. March 19th of 1945, they liquidated the same pair, Truus and Hannie, liquidated Gerko Bakker, who was the only Gerdo Bakker.
I have held through all of these names. And I'm only laughing. I'm only allowing myself to laugh because this man's a Nazi fascist.
Yes.
What do you
I
mean, Gerko Bakker? That sounds like one of the treats that our Australian friend sent us.
I stopped looking up pronunciation guides for literal Nazis. So
Gerko Bakkers, they're cheese-filled little kangaroos or whatever, I
would rather. This man's name is spelled Gerdo Bakker.
Those are letters in the alphabet. I have never once heard them in that order, and I'm not going to think about it.
So many words like that. Usually it drives me nuts not to include the most amount of specificity, and I have to talk myself. I was like, they literally don't need to know the model name of the gun she had.
No one in 2 weeks is so I'd say the name, but they were calling it Gerko Bakker, and I know that's not how you pronounce it. Anyway, so he was a Nazi. None of our listeners are that way.
It's true. I am. But it was so much easier because I was like, I don't know. I don't want to find out how to pronounce that. I actually don't want to figure out how to type that.
I'm too hard in the other direction because people write in and be like, have you once ever heard a single word in French? Why would you say it that way at all? Meanwhile, you're like, I'm sorry, I'm only intermediate Dutch, but this is my best attempt.
I've gotten so many comments about the pronunciation of, I pronounced it Calliope, and I'm going to stand by it.
Yeah.
But so many people trying in all the ways they can to tell us how to actually pronounce it without being able to talk to us.
Calliope. Yeah,
so
makes sense
funny.
to me.
It's Calliope, which does make sense.
Wow.
But yeah, I know.
You just kind of get a running start at the words,
Yeah.
you know?
Calliope. Okay. Gerd Obacher, I actually don't know what his crime was. I'm sure there was a good reason for it because these women are very vocal about the morals that they held about their targets. But the only description the book gave was that he had a lot of money from the German army.
Okay. Great.
Okay. Yeah, go off, Queen.
And we love that.
I guess. There were a bunch of other liquidation projects around this time, even though it's so close to the end of the war, which I thought was just wild. March 21st, Freddie was saved from a surprise German raid when people in the street around her started shouting Riza, I think it was. Yeah, Razia, which allowed Freddie time to bike away into this nearby little park wooded area, hide her gun, and come back. And when asked to produce her ID, she's the one that looks the youngest. And so she lied and said, I just turned 15. I don't have one.
Oh.
She was 19.
She has these cute little pigtails.
Yeah, cute little pigtails. And so she was let go. And she went back to Truus and asked Truus if she knew where Hannie was. Hannie, on March 21st, left to deliver newspapers to another resistance group and also to map some defenses. She was arrested at a routine checkpoint at a roadblock. Hannie was stopped and forced to show the contents of her bag, in which the soldiers found resistance papers. Her handbag, which I guess wasn't searched, is the one that had her gun in it, but it was confiscated. They would find the gun at once she's taken in. So she was taken in for questioning. By the end of the evening, she was, I think, interrogated by a number of people. She had not said anything, not given any names, and so she was taken to the Haarlem House of Detention. This is when her gun was discovered, and so she was then taken to Amsterdam. She was officially ID'd as the girl with the red hair, which is the moniker she had been given, and the Nazis in the area were all very aware of her.
Right.
She was officially ID'd as that. They suspected, and then they forced her to wash the black dye out of her hair, revealing her red hair underneath. And so she was isolated in, I think it was a room. They described it as a room. But on the door hung a sign that said Moorderin, which means murderer.
Okay. And this is March 1945?
This is March 21st, 22nd timeframe.
Okay.
Another prisoner, I think a doctor, remembers Hannie, saying that Hannie looked like she was at the end of her tether. The guards were overheard saying that Hannie was refusing to wash herself or eat or put her toilet bucket outside of her room or cell. She was interrogated day and night and even tortured and did not give away any names. And if we remember Ko, the guy that she shot in the head and back and then her and Truus had to go hold up a bar, that fiance came in and positively identified Hannie as the perpetrator or one of the perpetrators of the attempted assassination. So Hannie admitted to the attack. And she also admitted to a number of other attacks, some of which I previously mentioned, some I hadn't. This actually saved the lives of 5 women who were going to be murdered for retaliation.
Oh, shit. Okay.
She also admitted to the attack on Ragut and a number of others. April 17th, 1945, Hannie was taken from her cell, screaming long and hard as she was taken away. And she was taken specifically to some dunes outside of Haarlem. It's not clear who actually killed her, but one report said that it was one of the officials who had pointed his gun at her head and shot. She's facing away and missed. And it grazed her ear. And Hannie said, "Ow," and then allegedly turned around and shouted at her would-be executioner, "Idiot, I'm a better shot." Icon shit.
Fantastic last
what
words.
What the fuck? Girl. Slight trigger warning for gun violence. Her life was then ended by a machine gun to the neck. They buried her right then and there in the dunes. 3 weeks later, the war would end.
Yeah. In early May.
Yeah.
I got off by a month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was 24 or 25. I'm not sure. She was a legendary fighter and was known as the girl with the red hair and would become an icon of the female Dutch resistance, and I believe is still taught to Dutch elementary school or Dutch history classes. Truus went to track Hannie down after they realized they didn't know where she was. Truus probably spent a number of weeks searching through because she went from detention center to detention center and tried to desperately to find her. Eventually, she was sent to the right place in Amsterdam, and she disguised herself as, the book said, very Christian woman who believed she was there to give the last will and testament to Hannie. Hannie was then handed a book with the name J.J. Schaft crossed out. J.J. Schaft is Hannie's legal name, and the cross out is supposed to mean not there anymore. So she believed, hopefully, Hannie was let go. Hannie was still alive or something. And so when Liberation Day did finally come, she went back to that center with Feline to welcome Hannie as a liberated prisoner with flowers, and Hannie did not emerge. Liberation Day was May 5th, 1945. However, it would not be until May 8th that the first Canadians entered Haarlem and the Germans were actually disarmed. We're now going to talk, remembering Hannie, some of the, legacy of this story. Most of the, sad, the really sad shit's over. We're liberated now.
Right.
But, it's sad for so many people involved, right? So Hannie was reburied. I think her body was found and reburied on November 27th of 1945 with honors in the presence of Queen Wilhelmina, Princess Juliana, and Prince Bernhard in the Netherlands. She was buried in an honorary cemetery at the same dunes that she was shot in. She is now, as of the time of this book being published, which was 2019, the only woman among 371 men who were buried there. And this is a picture of the processional. I think they started it with the memorial service at a church and then carried the casket out to where the burial site would be.
Whoa.
Yeah. It's a fuck ton of people.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Mm-hmm. And her casket is covered in the flag. Every year in November, there was an annual commemoration at the cemetery Hannie was buried at, organized by initially the Hannie Schaft Committee. During the Cold War in 1951, there was political tension about whether or not it should be hosted. There was conversation about what kinds of events the government should be hosting and conversation about if Hannie was communist or not, and if this event actually served the nation. Is this actually just a demonstration? That kind of thing. Basically, the government said you can't have it. 4,000 people showed up anyway. And armored police showed up to prevent people from actually getting to the burial site. There's a wreath laying portion of this ceremony. And a few people did get past and were able to lay flowers, but those people were arrested.
Right.
One armored car aimed at a group that Truus was standing with, and Truus walked straight up to it and said, "Are you going to really shoot us, boy? I fought 5 years for your liberation. Would you really shoot at me, at us?"
What year is this?
45. Or no, 51, sorry, 51.
Amazing.
Incredible. Queen Wilhelmina called Hannie the symbol of the national resistance against fascism. The Allied commander-in-chief, Dwight D. Eisenhower, posthumously honored her with the Special Medal of Freedom. Over 15 cities have a street named after her, according to one source. In 1981, Hannie was posthumously given the Dutch Cross of Resistance, presented by Queen Beatrix. We're going to talk more about that in a second. But also in 1981, a movie was made about Hannie called Het Meisje met het rode haar. Rode haar. It translates to the girl with the red hair. It's entirely in Dutch, but I will link it in the show notes because I did find an English dubbed version, and I watched about the first half. I'm going to watch the second half tonight. It's not they do what movies do where they combine certain timelines and stuff, but I also think that
certain movies and me do sometimes.
Yeah. I think one source maybe said that this movie had been used to teach kids about Hannie previously.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, it's fun. May 3rd, 1982, a bronze statue of Hannie was unveiled in Haarlem. The statue is titled Woman in Resistance. And it was sculpted by none other than Truus, who had received the commission based on a submission that she had made under a pseudonym because she genuinely wanted the best person to get it. This is the statue Woman in Resistance with Truus, who is on the left. And photo was taken in 82. And then the older person on the right is Princess Juliana.
Wow.
The statue is like not at all what I expected when I heard about it, but it's like
it's rough, but like in a cool way.
It's really cool. Yeah. Truus would later go on to do like a lot of international war memorials and all kinds of stuff. Women in resistance. In 1996, Truus, I think, and Freddie founded the National Hannie Schaft Foundation to promote the legacy of Hannie. Hannie became a martyr and an icon representing female resistance, and her story is taught to school children across the Netherlands. In 2018, this foundation is renamed to the National Hannie Schaft Foundation. This foundation organizes that yearly commemoration ceremony of Hannie and also raises awareness of the dangers of exclusion and discrimination by providing information to schools, organizing exhibitions, and cooperating with other like-minded institutions. If you're in the Netherlands and want to attend this commemoration, it's the last Sunday of every November. And there is a wreath-laying ceremony, I think either at the gravesite or at the statue, and then there's a speech given by a prominent Dutch individual. There's some music that happens, and then there is a silent march from, I believe, the church to the park where the statue is.
You know, obviously Hannie's not related to Freddie and Truus, but it really does feel like they like memorialized her as one of their own fellow sisters.
They really cool. Did. Yeah. All in all, living after the war, that was a 5-year-long experience for the Oversteegen sisters. Truus remembered that they were always in hiding because of the dangerous nature of their work. Quote, "I have been hiding at 51 addresses. I could almost have been Jewish." Like it goes from damn to oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Freddie and Truus had to go into hiding themselves again for a time after the war was over because of their alleged communist beliefs. It's not clear if they actually were or weren't or whatever, but, quote, "What was an act of resistance before the war was a crime after the war. Our resistance work was not appreciated. On the contrary, we were condemned." Truus and Freddie had to deal with the trauma of war, their own actions, and losing a best friend. Sophie Poldermans, who is the author of the primary book that I used for this, got to know the sisters in the 90s and would later write this book and then a number of articles. Quote, "I have no romantic image of their work. They were no cowgirls. They inspired me on many levels, but their work in pursuit of the right this was by necessity ruthless. And getting to know the Oversteegens, I also witnessed their own struggles to come to terms with the past." But Sophie also said, "I remember a surreal discussion between the two sisters where they were quarreling about which one of them shot a particular Nazi." Sisters do be sisters, you know?
Siblings are siblings.
Yeah. Both women would suffer pretty severe mental health issues at various points in their lives.
Could imagine.
Yeah. Freddie sometimes would not get out of bed for days. Truus spent some time in a mental institution. Both had intense nightmares, especially whenever Liberation Day was celebrated or D-Day was celebrated. Specifically around May 4th and 5th is when Commemoration Day and Liberation Day are. One of Freddie's sons, Remy, would say later that the war never ended for his mother.
Yeah.
Sophie found out from the sisters that she believes that they were suffering from PTSD, like symptoms that would not have been diagnosed as that at the time, but today we know as PTSD.
Right.
They had severe nightmares, screaming and fighting in their sleep. There were also letters from Hannie suggesting that she was also likely struggling with depression and PTSD from, especially after the death of Jan. Freddie specifically cites a battle song that she thinks about when she's struggling with the nightmares and insomnia. The lyrics go something like, "We have carried the best to our graves, torn and fired at, beaten till the blood ran, surrounded by the executioners on the scaffold and jail, but the raging of the enemy doesn't frighten us." Both women would continue to fight for what they believed in was right, usually in the form of resisting various wars, each in their own way. For example, Freddie collected sewing machines to be shipped during the Vietnam War. Unfortunately, the two did continue to face discrimination for their perceived beliefs and also their fucking gender.
That they might be female communists?
Yes.
Okay.
In 1947, resistance fighters could claim a pension from the government. That was withheld from the sisters because they were communist.
Okay.
They did not get it until the 60s. It's unsure if it was back paid or whatever, but when they finally did get their pensions, they were receiving less than their male counterparts.
Of course they were.
Why? There's literally no reason why. When Hannie was posthumously granted the Dutch Cross of Resistance by Queen Beatrix, Freddie was there to accept the award. Neither of the Oversteegen sisters were acknowledged that they also did the same work. They were not awarded at that ceremony. That was in 81. Quote, "I will never forget it. After the presentation of the medal, Beatrix came back. She said, embarrassed, 'Excuse me, I gave you the wrong box. I gave you a big box, which is for the men. The women get the little box.'" Isn't that fucking
For the
insane?
liberation of your country. I got to get you the little box.
Bitch, your ancestors were hiding in London.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Ancestors, it might have been her. It's 1980s.
Honestly, yeah. Truus continued to be her unvarnished self, very open about her experiences in the war, and she would give speeches and write books about it. Quote, this is a quote from Sophie describing her. Quote, "Truus was always very extroverted, engaging, and fun person. Her level-headedness, self-mockery, and positive attitude toward life made her very popular. She was direct, spoke with the unvarnished truth, and told lots of jokes. She loved to bring her ideals forward and always kept resisting wars and fighting for their victims. And she made art to cope. Painting and sculptures, not only woman in resistance, but other memorial sculptures, including international war memorials. She got married to a fellow resistance fighter, pt.1, which would make her Truus Manger Oversteegen. He would end up staying home to take care of the children because Truus was on the road so often, giving speeches, doing exhibitions, accepting awards, whatever. Together they had 4 children, one of which being a girl named Hannie. In 1982, she wrote her memoir, it's titled Not Then, Not Now, Not Ever. And I need to read it. I don't know how else to say it. In 2010, she also published a collection of poems called In My Mind's Eye. She would receive an honorary medal from Eisenhower.
You said in 2010?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Honorary medal from Eisenhower and the Yad Vashem Award from the Israeli Prime Minister at whatever time she was given this, Ben Gurion. As for Freddie, a description from Sophie, Freddie was sweet and gentle and very different from her sister. She made a very youthful and girlish impression throughout her entire life, but she could also be very fierce and at times very discontented. Freddie, right after the war, would work for the Political Investigations Service, or the POD. They were responsible for arresting people who had collaborated with the Germans during the war. She noticed at some point that there were people working in high-up positions that had worked with the Germans, and they were not being...
Inside the POD.
Yes, they were not being forced to resign or whatever. When she brought it up, she was told to forget that information.
Right.
She immediately resigned.
Not going to be an accomplice to
Fucking
this.
stand on principle, bitches. Freddie coped by, quote, getting married and having babies.
Oh, okay.
Truus would throw her energy into work and speeches and art, and Freddie instead coped by
being a mom,
developing this family. And so she said that in 2016, she coped by getting married and having babies. She chose to keep a more secluded life, I think a lot at the request of her husband, but also I think that's just who she was.
Sure.
Comparatively to her sister, there's not a lot known about her after the war, I think, until later on. So she then married Jan Dekker, an engineer, and became Freddie Dekker Oversteegen, and they raised 3 kids together. After her husband retired, the pair traveled the world in a motorhome every year from December to May so that they could distance themselves from the liberation celebrations.
Aww.
And Freddie was a much happier, carefree version of herself in that motorhome. Her husband passed in 2003, and after that, Freddie did become a lot more open about talking about her time in the war, although not frequently and never in public.
Sure. How long did Freddie live for?
We're at the very last section.
Sorry.
I'll tell you. No, you're good. As both women grew older, both in their own ways were resentful for the lack of acknowledgement they received for their contributions to the war. But on April 15th, 2014, quote, "Throughout much of their long lives, the Netherlands failed to properly recognize the women's achievements and sidelined them as communists. In 2014, they finally received national recognition for their service to the country by receiving the Mobilisati. I'm not even going to try and pronounce that. It's the War Mobilization Cross, the Dutch Mobilization Cross. Look at this.
It looks great, though.
Yeah.
Looks great.
I've never seen those letters in that order.
There's a dash in the middle of that.
There's so many O's that it can't be cross. I don't know. So they finally get the mobilization cross. Later, June 12th of that same year, 2014, both Oversteegen sisters were each had a street named after them. Each had their own street named after them. I guess on Truus's street, there are houses or properties that are occupied by the owners. And then on Freddie's street, it's more rental properties. And so Freddie's comment was, well, there's always someone who will do you one better.
That's so sisters, though.
That's so sisters. Fucking
with my brother and I would notice that right away.
Are you kidding me?
Either end of that spectrum, I'm noticing it right away.
That shit.
Yeah.
Yep. Truus would pass on June 18th, 2016.
Wow.
At the age of 92. Following Truus's passing in 2016, Freddie would remember being a little jealous of the attention and recognition her sister had received, but would remind herself, I was in the resistance too. And after Truus's passing, Freddie began to speak a lot more publicly and openly about her time in the resistance. Basically, any interview I found with Freddie happened after Truus passed. In the final years of her life, Freddie lived in a nursing home in Driehuis, 5 miles away from Haarlem. She passed September 5th of 2018, so 2 years later, the same age that Truus was at the age of 92. In fact, they were only 1 day before her 93rd birthday.
Wow.
Sophie Poldermans, who wrote that book, that was the primary source, was close friends with the sisters in their later years and wrote a great epilogue about the importance of remembering their story. And if these are 2 quotes, the first one is Sophie, and then the next bullet is just the last quote from Truus, and then a couple pictures.
Freedom is a great gift. Unfortunately, this is not self-evident, and we must continue to cherish it. With the disappearance of the first generation of survivors of the war, it is all the more important to keep their stories alive, to pass them on and to learn from them. Exclusion and discrimination still happen all around us and on a large scale. People are not the same, but they are equal. It is of vital importance to let people look in the mirror and make them aware of the danger. What would you have done if you had been in the shoes of Hannie, Truus, or Freddie? Would you have dared to make the same decisions? I cannot answer that for myself. Fortunately, I've never found myself in such a situation, and I sincerely hope that this will never happen. But it does happen. The great challenge will be to remain human at all times, even and perhaps especially in times of inhumanity. And then the last quote from Truus. What I want to pass on to young people is that if you have to make a decision, that decision must be a right one, and you must always remain human.
And then there are the last 2 pictures, I believe, at the ceremony where they were awarded the Dutch Mobilization Cross. That's with the Prime Minister.
Okay.
This is Truus, and that is Freddie. Look at
amazing.
That. Look at how proud she is.
Absolutely.
She's giving cunt again.
This is Truus, yeah?
No, This is Freddie.
Sorry, yeah. The younger one.
The
Freddie,
younger one, yep. And then this is Freddie, I believe, around shortly before her passing. But
looks great.
Like, I would get a drink with that woman.
I love the red leather jacket she wore into her 80s. Yeah.
Fucking incredible. But yeah, so now you, I think, know a little bit why when I started getting into it, I was like, why the fuck is the headline that they seduced SS officers?
Right.
Like, I get it, but...
They didn't need to use sex to kill them. They just oftentimes biked and killed them.
And literally just fucking raw-dogged that shit.
Which makes Tyler the most likely assassin in our friend group.
Fuck.
I know.
He would feel so much guilt over it.
He would.
He would turn himself in immediately. Doesn't
necessarily change his actions, as we've also learned. Guilt and change in course are not correlated sometimes, but that's okay. That's okay. I mean, who isn't that way? We all love him.
Well, thank you for providing ancillary information.
Thank you for the chance to do a history episode that's not me. That's so fun.
I was at the beer garden last night, like working on these notes, and at some point I moved over to the fire pits and was just typing away.
Sure.
And there was a woman there that I had like had a few weird interactions with earlier. We were like laughing with each other about random stuff, and there was a couple that had sat down with her, and so she was talking to me a little bit, and then this guy was talking to me while his wife was talking to this woman. And he started asking me about like what the work from home situation is like at that beer garden because, and I was like, oh, I've like literally haven't done it, but I've wanted to because they do a 2 taco and beer special with like sides for $13.
Wow.
Yeah, and like during the day, that place is like
during the weekday?
Deserted. Yeah.
Good
I'm like,
to know.
Yeah,
Next
you're
week is testing week. That's good to know.
Yeah, without the beer, $10. So
okay.
Also their happy hour deal is pretty great. It's like $5 for like most of their
now
drafts.
we're talking.
Yeah, incredible. But this guy started talking to me, and I was like, oh, like I'm not actually working. I'm working on like a side project, and he noticed that I kept not saying what it was, and he was like, "Is it a secret?" And I was like, I have a podcast, and I'm like researching for the story. And he was like, "Well, what's the story?" And I like told him about it. And he was like, "Is that similar to the?" And then he said like the name of like a French resistance group, and I was like, "I don't know." My co-host knows a lot about history, and so I'm gonna kind of rely on him for some of that. Anyway, he was lovely. Apparently, he used to be a professional dancer with the Colorado Ballet.
Good for him.
We realized that I definitely saw him in a production of The Nutcracker when I was young.
When husbands get left unattended without cornhole to distract them, you have no idea what they're going to say sometimes.
He was a delight. He was like, I was like, "What do you do?" Because he had asked me about what I do, and he was like, "I'm a lawyer. I used to be like a ballet dancer, but now I'm old and broken." And so him and his wife was also a ballet dancer, and they were at the beer garden drinking during their son's karate class down the road.
Incredible.
And I was like, oh.
Keep the romance alive.
I know. This is beautiful.
No, kiddo, we have dinner at home. And they like downed a plate of nachos together during his karate lessons.
Yeah. So anyway, if you're listening, hi. Love talking to you.
I hope you enjoyed the sticker Maya probably offered you.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Good.
Because I was like, "It's while I laughed." And he was like, it's while I laughed. And I was like, I'm just going to.
This is when I go to restaurants, I say my name is Thomas because Grant is the most easily understandable name to everyone except people who asked what my name is. And they're like, Brent? No.
See, I don't think my name is
Grant?
easier to understand, but unfortunately for me, it's easier for people to understand than my mom's name. And so my mom just used my name. And half the time she would put my name on like orders and stuff, and they'd shout my name, and like anxious 13-year-old Maya would start freaking out.
That's funny.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well done. No, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
It wasn't as sad as I like. It was sad.
It was good.
It still had its moments.
It ended sad, but like we killed a lot of Nazis before we got there.
Kill a lot of Nazis.
Yeah.
Oh, the camera just gave up, so that's good.
Great. Like
Perfect
just
timing.
Right now.
Yeah.
Find more of us on social media where we are Well I Laughed. This theme
He's still
is
looking at the camera.
Righteous Resistor. I mean, it's a habit at this point. Righteous Resistance.
Yes.
Is the where we settled on it. Okay. So if you have moments where you were righteously resisting something.
Or committed a crime.
Right. Or huge for our listeners. Maybe you resisted something at work or your friend group or, just the urge to get a sweet treat. Go ahead and write in, send those stories, and we'll read them on the latest listener episodes. And you can send that to wellilaughdpod@gmail.com or wellilaughed.com. Finally, you can find additional Patreon and more secrets, additional content and secrets on Patreon. And you can always get a little direct message straight from us via Cameo. It's been 2 weeks since I did that speech. Can I sharpen it up tomorrow? We're going to double record tomorrow.
Yeah. We're going to double record Patreon tomorrow.
Great.
That's what we agreed on? Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm tired. I also don't have a title. So
you never pitched that. So yeah,
noodle
absolutely.
on that. I initially said I was going to go to a 6 a.m. workout class with Jacob.
Oh my
and
God.
Tomorrow's cardio and today was strength. And today I was like, and I texted Jacob like immediately after class and was like, "Did you hear about what happened last week at F45? We were supposed to do the 6 a.m. class and it was April 1st. And so the night before, this is the first 6 a.m. class Jacob and I will have done together.
We're not going to get any video content of this.
No, it's fine.
Right? Okay.
I don't even know if I'm going to keep this.
Okay.
The night before, I was like, oh my God, if this is Jacob's April Fool's prank, I'm going to fucking kill him.
A legitimate possibility.
Yeah. And he was like, I'll pick you up at 6. And I was like, okay. And then my phone died in the middle of the night. So my alarm didn't go off. The many calls Jacob, I'm assuming, tried to send through did not go through. And so he ended up going to the workout class alone. At the end, responded to that message about April Fools and was like, I just want to be really clear about where I stand. So I was like,
Yeah, he's the man who years ago, when I visited them up in Seattle, back before phones had unlimited data or even really
Right.
like an authentic connection to the internet.
Right.
You were always looking for that Wi-Fi password for your iPhone. And they told me as they went to bed one night, oh, it's on the fridge. And then they went to sleep and I
Oh my
spent
God.
45 minutes scouring the fridge. I'm turning over shit in their drawers. Like, I'm like, did they put it away? Like, I'm like bank statement, birth certificate,
I'm so
passport,
lucky
Social
you were just
Security,
sitting
no
there
card.
laughing at me when I went to go look at the fridge.
Yeah, because I
45
legit.
minutes.
Yeah, because and then after a while, I was like, well, fuck me. I guess I don't need to like be on my phone the night. I'll just go to bed. And then the next day I told them and they're like, that's so funny. You never tried It's on the fridge. And they go, no, because that's also kind of like a long password.
That is a really long password, and like, what's capitalized?
Yeah. My boyfriend's internet password, because I feel safe enough to share this.
Yeah.
I don't think it's his password to like his bank account information. Could be wrong though. I don't know, so I'm speaking out of ignorance.
Jesus, shut up. Just stop going down that rabbit hole.
What do you want to know what the
Yeah,
password
I
is?
do. I do. Stop trying to justify why you're saying it.
Homosexuals rule. And I won't tell you what is a regular letter and
Is it
what's like a special.
ROOL?
I'm not going to. Ooh. RUPAUL. RuPaul.
Well,
Homosexuals do rule.
that's true.
Big fans of them.
Okay.
Bye again, maybe.
I don't
Bye.
know.